My toxic friend goes on a spending spree after she steals my debit card as well as some of my jewelry straight out of my house, racking up over $1,000 in expenses and overdraft fees. But after finding out the truth, I decided that I was going to get some revenge by forcing her to pay me back, otherwise I was going to the police. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened many years ago. At the time, I was young, married, and pregnant. The perfect trifecta to be socially ostracized. Most people felt that I had married up, as my husband came from money and had a good job, which meant, unlike most young married people, I had a beautiful home and nice things. Just about everyone my age was either in college or still in high school. Most of the people I knew who were married and pregnant were much older than me, and so I was having a hard time. Naively, I initially tried to make and maintain friendships with people my age or even just a little bit younger, but this was a problem for so many reasons, not the least of which being that when you're young, lonely, and have nice things that most other young people don't have, you can draw the wrong kinds of friends. I developed a friendship with a girl who was finishing up her senior year in high school. We had gone to the same school and she was a freshman when I was a junior, and we had some friends in common. She started coming over to my house and hanging out, and one evening she asked if she could bring a friend over to the house with her for dinner, and I said sure. At one point that evening, my friend's guest asked to use the restroom. My husband and I explained where it was, but we didn't escort her, trusting that she would find it herself. She then walked around the corner, basically in the direction of said bathroom, and came back shortly afterwards. The night then ended with no clue on my husband's part or on my part that things were about to get incredibly crazy. About a week later, I couldn't find a pair of earrings I wore on my wedding day. My husband bought me a pearl and diamond necklace and earring set as a wedding gift. We tore the house apart looking for them, but to no avail. My husband then said that I must have set them down somewhere and just forgotten, but that we would eventually find them. Now, I was anxious about it, but I knew the last place I'd had them was at home. We also had not done any major deep cleaning or vacuuming, so I knew they had to be around here somewhere. A few weeks went by, and I suddenly noticed one of our checking accounts that we set up as a business account for my husband when he was contemplating starting a side hustle was massively in the negative, to the tune of almost $1,000. Most of it was overdraft fees, because we didn't keep much of a balance in that account anyways. I immediately called my husband and I told him that we had a large negative balance in that specific account. Now, neither of us had been using the debit card for that account mistakenly, so we began reviewing the charges. Well, all the charges were for a store at the same local mall, and these were for places that teenage girls would typically shop at. There were dozens of small to medium purchases, each followed by a $25 overdraft fee once they spent the initial balance we kept in the account to avoid penalties. And this all added up to about $1,000 in total theft. Now, we had not had many people over, and we specifically kept the debit card in our master bedroom, so it was pretty easy to figure out what happened and just who was responsible. It also wasn't that much of a hop, skip, and a jump to also figure out where my earrings went. Now, the word pissed off doesn't begin to describe my mental state. I had been incredibly generous with this friend. I had welcomed her into my home. I had cooked for her and her friend. I called every store in the mall, and I began asking if they had any security cameras. Now, most did not, but one store had just recently installed security cameras due to issues they had with shoplifting. They let me know that while they had recorded footage from the day in question, they could not hand it over to me, but they would be happy to hand it over to me if I filed a police report. I then contacted my bank, and I asked them what the procedure was for declaring fraudulent charges and reversing them. They then indicated that an investigation would need to take place and that I had a limited amount of time to make that decision before I permanently assumed responsibility for those charges. They also made it clear that the overdraft fees would not be reversed unless I declare the charges were fraudulent. Well, I did more digging, and $2,000 in theft was the cutoff for felony charges. My earrings were worth approximately $800, and we had about $1,000 worth of charges plus overdraft fees in the checking account. So with this, I contacted my friend, and I let her know the horrible news that someone we had over at the house had stolen from me. I explained to her that my pearl earrings from my wedding had gone missing, and that someone had stolen my debit card that we kept upstairs in my master bedroom before running up charges at the mall. Well, when I said that, she seemed very sympathetic and said, "Oh, well, that is just so terrible." But it's here that I told her a very nice little white lie, that we were going to pursue felony charges, since between the earrings, the charges at all of these stores, and the many overdraft fees, more than $2,000 worth of theft had occurred. Well, when I said this, she was quick to chime in with the information that she was pretty sure there would be no way to prove who'd used the debit card, as the store malls that I'd mentioned didn't have any security cameras. And you know what? When she said that, a light went off in my head. Bingo. Thanks for all but confirming what I already knew. That's when I helpfully supplied the information that one of the stores had just recently installed security cameras, and that they were preparing to hand it over to the police once I filed a report. After I said that, she got extremely quiet and said that she had to go. Not so surprisingly later, she she called me back shortly after that and asked if she could come over. She then showed up within 30 minutes, not only with my pearl earrings and debit card, but also a small diamond ring I inherited from my great aunt that I had no clue was missing. And this is something I had never worn, and I primarily held on to it for sentimental reasons. She then had a very well-rehearsed little explanation. She said she hadn't stolen anything from me. Apparently, her friend snuck up my stairs into my bedroom and stole some of my jewelry and my debit card under the pretense of using my bathroom. When I pointed out that clearly she knew about the theft, and yet she said and did nothing, she began crying, arguing that she was in a difficult spot. I didn't want to betray my friend, meaning that clearly I didn't qualify as a friend. She then confessed that there were multiple others involved in shopping sprees at the mall, including her, meaning that she seemed quite content to participate in racking up charges on my checking account along with her friend, despite claiming that she had not stolen from me. I was honestly devastated by the near loss of sentimental pieces of jewelry, which I felt incredibly fortunate to have back, and this made it incredibly easy for me to shut down her attempts at emotional manipulation. I made it clear under no uncertain terms that as far as I was concerned, whatever happened next was up to them, and that I had no problem seeing them all charged with felony robbery. Now, 2 of the 4 were 17 and the others were 18, so felony charges could have been a pretty big deal. I then demanded all the names and the parents' contact information, and I made it clear that if I didn't get it, I was absolutely going to the police. I called the parents and informed them of what their little angels had done, and I also informed the parents that I would provide their children with the opportunity to repay the full amount of what they charged on my checking account, plus all the overdraft fees. I then made it clear that this was a time-sensitive offer that expired with about a week of buffer time in terms of the deadlines to file fraud with my bank in case they failed to follow through somehow. Well, needless to say, the parents were horrified by the behavior and extremely grateful for my offer. And you know what? It was quite satisfying to know that the 4 of them had to get jobs and work long hours over the next few weeks just to pay me back. At one point, my former friend tried questioning me about the amount they owed and actually claimed it seemed like way more than what they spent and that this was just not fair. But I took great pleasure in explaining how they racked up overdraft fees that the bank refused to reverse unless I filed fraud claims. Their little shopping spree had cost them about 3 to 4 times what it would have been if they had just used their own money. My former friend also tried to ask for more time and insisted it was too hard to pay me back in such a short period of time. I then took great pleasure in asking her point blank why I should even trust them or take a risk on them given their recent actions. And when I said that, that literally shut her up pretty quickly. Ultimately, I received all my jewelry back and I was repaid for all of the charges and the overdraft fees. And thankfully, I never spoke to any of them ever again. Oh my gosh, dude, I would lose my mind if this was me. Like, this is some crazy stuff, dude. They literally robbed you. They went up to your bathroom and just stole stuff, straight up took your debit card and some jewelry and said, oh my gosh, we're gonna have so much fun. Like, honestly, how calculated can you possibly get? These people knew exactly what they were doing. They tried to go to stores that had no cameras or anything like that, and they probably thought for a second they were scot-free. Oh yeah, we're gonna get away with this. Like, holy crap, talk about having no moral compass. And no, them being teenagers has nothing to do with this. It doesn't take a genius to say, okay, maybe I shouldn't rob my friend. And I also just love the fact that this idiot's trying to be like, I need more time. This isn't nearly enough time to get this done. This isn't fair. But it's like, dude, none of this is fair. You literally robbed me blind, bro. Like, what are you talking about? That's what's not fair, not the fact that you have to work to try and pay off your debt. So yeah, I think this whole scenario is hilarious and these people deserve to get punished, especially if they're gonna lie to your face and try and get away with it in the way that they did. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled Karen screams at me and my mom for not supervising her kids while we were at the pool, leaving me and my mom stunned that anyone would think we would be a free babysitter for kids that we literally don't even know. Here's how it went down. Okay, so I was 25 years old when I was on a beach vacation with my mom. We were in the shared condo pool enjoying a quiet swim when a group of unsupervised kids, maybe between the ages of 6 and 10 years old, jump in and join the pool. And there were no adults anywhere except for me and my mom. Within minutes, they started doing really dangerous stuff. Stuff like diving into the shallow end and holding each other under the water. Well, as a result, we got out because we didn't want anyone to think that we were responsible if one of them got hurt. And while we were drying off, a woman finally walked in. We politely asked if they were her kids and then mentioned what they were doing. Now, instead of, oh, I don't know, parenting them, she went ballistic on us in front of the children. She was screaming and cussing, blaming us for not supervising her kids, like it was somehow our job to play lifeguard just because we were nearby adults. And then she just straight up left. left, like fully ignored them again. But my mom and I just went back to our condo and stayed away from the pool after that, because apparently some people think that a public pool actually means free babysitting. Okay, I cannot stand people like this at all. Dude, take care of your kids. Why are they at the pool in the first place without you present? And no, just because I'm an adult doesn't mean I'm gonna watch your stupid bratty children. Like, why would I be responsible for any of this in the first place? Like, you've got to be kidding me. It's also incredibly upsetting that she's trying to sit there and be like, you are the problem here. I can't believe that you didn't watch my children. This is your fault they're acting this way. And it's like, no, dude, this is your fault. You're a terrible parent and clearly you don't know how to be one. So yeah, if I was in your shoes, I would have absolutely avoided the pool after that, because there's no way I will ever be responsible if these idiot kids end up hurting themselves. Like, that is not my problem and I'm not gonna deal with it. Am I the jerk for ordering a takeaway meal after my in-laws ate my food and called me a picky eater? Here's what's going on. Okay, I want to start off by saying that I'm a 30-year-old female and I had a barbecue with my partner's family about a week ago. Both me and my partner brought food for ourselves and to share as well, since I don't eat certain things. For example, I don't eat meat apart from bird meat, fish, or seafood. I also can't have too much lactose products or anything too oily, and I'm also intolerant to a couple of fruits. And this is because with all of the above, I get very nasty stomach issues if consumed. The food we brought included some chicken pieces, some wings, and some vegetables like asparagus, potatoes, and corn. After we got settled, I went to grab some of the food we brought to find out that it was all gone. I have questioned my father-in-law about it as he was in charge of the grill, and he told me other family members ate it first. Now, I have pointed out that it was the food we brought with ourselves and intended to eat ourselves too. But both my father and mother-in-law dismissed me and said that I'm being a picky eater since there's still food on the table. And this is stuff like beef and pork, which by the way, I can't eat. Well, I got really annoyed and I decided to just order some takeaway for myself. Well, my in-laws then called me a jerk since I haven't asked anyone else if they wanted to order too, and because it made some of the kids upset. And also, the kids in question are all between the ages of 14 and 35, so they're hardly kids if you ask me. Well, my partner is now torn, with my in-laws still making snarky comments and calling me a spoiled princess. Now, it's important to make some notes about this because, as I said in the beginning, both me and my partner brought food for ourselves and to share, meaning that we had 3 full bags in total, and where I come from, that's a common thing to do. My father-in-law was in charge of the grill due to his own rules, and he had splurged on an expensive new one not so long ago and would refuse anyone near it. Also, they knew about my restrictions, and that some of the food was specifically mine. These people have known me for nearly a decade, and we had plenty of meals and barbecues together, and the restrictions were never a problem. So seriously, am I the jerk here? Because right now, I'm not sure what to do. Okay, in my opinion, it really seems like these people are targeting you in some kind of way, because if they've known you for nearly a decade and they definitely know about your dietary restrictions, then they wouldn't be like, oh yeah, just eat the food, she's being way too picky. Like, that's really toxic in my opinion. I just don't like that at all. And it honestly begs the question, like, why are they acting that way? And why are they trying to make you the bad guy when they knew for a fact, hey, this is her food and she's the only one that can really have this? Not to mention the fact that you had enough that you could share, but everybody ate everything in the process. And honestly, I don't blame you for like ordering food for yourself, because if my food had gotten eaten by everybody else at the party and there was nothing else I could eat, then guess what? I'm gonna order food and eat it there. Like, what's going on right now? I'm sure your stuff was labeled and these people just took advantage of that and said, okay, we're gonna eat all of it. So no, if these people want to be petty, then guess what? You could be petty right back by ordering food. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk, and I think your in-laws are being incredibly toxic. An entitled idiotic party literally admits that our restaurant is full, and then in the same sentence complains that we don't have a table for them, leaving me questioning my entire reality. Here's what's going on. Okay, to start things out, a 3-top walks in at the tail end of a rush when nearly all my tables are full and there's not much seating left at the bar rail. There's no host on this particular day, so I greet them at the door. Well, when they walk in, they immediately comment on how full it is, literally by saying, wow, it's really full in here. But I just nod and agree with them because yeah, we were packed. They asked for a table for 3, and I have one singular table that is not already seated that fits 3 people, and it has a reserve sign physically placed on the table. The reservation is due in about 15 minutes, so there truly is no wiggle room. I then offer them a spot at the bar or a 30-minute wait, which immediately changes the tone in the room. They look at me and say, wow, really? You won't seat us anywhere? And it's like, okay, I see we've forgotten how to use our eyes in the last 30 seconds since you walked in, and literally said, oh yeah, it's so full in here. They then point at the table reserved like I somehow haven't noticed it, and said, well, why not there? And I tell them I have a reservation, and they just give me a dramatic eye roll. They then start asking if I can push a couple of 2-tops together for them. This is a very small restaurant, only 11 tables in total, and there are 3 2-tops in the aisles between the larger tables and the bar, and they pretty clearly max out the available space in the restaurant. Now, the host stand is so close to the door, this party keeps having to move out of the way of people walking in between between them. There is not 1 square foot of extra space in this place, I assure you. Pushing the 2 tops together is just very clearly not an option, both in the sense that it's definitely not safe or compliant with fire code, but also because it would take up all of our walking space between tables. They would be back to back with people sitting at the bar, like literally touching if one person leans back at all. This is a restaurant that doesn't use large food trays because they just don't fit down the aisle. Anyways, I explain all of this to them, and they look at me and tell me that they're just gonna have to go somewhere else. Then they stare at me for a good while. Well, I just look at them and I nod, and they give another dramatic eye roll and just say, "Wow, just wow," literally as they walk out the door. So somebody more empathetic than me, please explain their thought process. I've dealt with this kind of complaint so many times, and I'm always just flabbergasted at what they think I should do to solve the problem. Like, you can literally see there isn't a table available to you, meaning that there is literally nothing I can do to fix this. Yeah, this group was super entitled. They literally commented and said, "Oh wow, it's really full in here," and then tried to pretend like they were some kind of like VIP. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? You're not that important. And you didn't make a reservation, so no, you can't have the reserved table, dude. It's not for you. Like, how is it possible they can not only like confirm that yes, this place is packed, but also complain that there's no room for them? They would rather you break the fire code than wait to be seen. Like, dude, okay, if you feel that way, then feel free to leave. So this really is some stupid behavior, and I just don't blame you for being annoyed, because if I was in your shoes, I would feel the exact same way. Today, my job literally decided that I was not allowed to ask any questions anymore to customers, resulting in utter chaos as I literally did exactly what they said. Here's what happened. Okay, so I work at a retail store where each sale requires on average 10 minutes of paperwork, and that's if you're fast and know what you're doing. 2 months into the job, the boss told us new hires to stop asking questions in front of the customers. The boss said that we look like clowns and that customers lose confidence. Now, the only training they provided was asking questions. They'd stick you with a customer and make you guess how to process the paperwork, and if you got stuck, you'd ask for help. They would then tell you what to click, but not why you're clicking it. And then they info dump all exceptions to the rule they just gave you. Well, this is where my malicious compliance comes into play. I literally just stopped asking questions, and I take my sweet time guessing my way through all the paperwork. Now, because of this, a few things have happened. First of all, I've undercharged customers. And because I'm now taking up to 40 minutes to do this, I've actually had a customer walk out and say, "Look, just call me when you actually have time for me because I can't be here all day." A customer also decided not to buy. The senior employee was also mad that I didn't ask about shipping. They tried to say that I should have made an exception and ask a question anyways. Now, when I'm at the sales desk, instead of asking if we sell a product or accept insurance, I just tell callers that we don't, and this saves me from doing the work of looking them up. When I'm working the reception desk, I waste time looking up obscure insurance policies instead of just asking a senior employee. I'm also not Latino, but I do speak some Spanish, and now when Spanish speakers call in, I only respond in English. Now, before, I would speak Spanish, and I would ask for help if I needed it, but now, because of the no question policy, I don't even ask my coworkers if they're free to take a call. I feel bad for these people though, but not too bad, because all they have to do is call back and hope that I don't answer. Because at the end of the day, this is my company's fault for literally not wanting me to ask any questions. Dude, this is like some malicious compliance that goes way beyond anything I would ever expect. Like, seriously, these people literally are like, "Don't ask any more questions, stop it." And the original poster is just like, "Oh, okay, you got it. I'm not gonna ask any questions ever again." Taking this to another extreme that I honestly just did not think was possible. So good for you for getting some petty revenge and maliciously complying, because this is absolutely hilarious. An entitled Karen demands that she be allowed to butt in line, all because she was late for her flight, saying that she needs our spot way more than her, even though she should have shown up early like everybody else. Here's what's happening. Okay, so I flew into Seattle yesterday for a meeting, and then flew right back home from Seattle to Nashville today. So yeah, I'm tired like most everyone else standing in line at the car rental spot waiting for the shuttle buses. And this line is incredibly long. When I got in line, 2 buses came for pickup, and I was still in line, but I decided I would just make the next bus. And this is honestly all good. But unfortunately, this is where the entitled family of this story comes into play. There's a mom, a dad, a grandma, and 3 kids, with all the luggage for 6 people plus a stroller and car seats. And at this point, I practically hear them say, "Oh God, look at this line, we're gonna miss our flight." The entitled mom of this family runs to the front of the line and asks if they can get in front. They're running so late and they would really appreciate it. But thankfully, the employee says, "No, sorry, you'll have to wait at the end of it like everybody else." And mind you, the rest of the family is just standing there. They've not even gotten in line yet. So more people are coming and the line is obviously getting longer. The lady then starts walking along the line, asking if they can just bump in front, and people keep saying no. Now, just before she got to where I was, she asked this guy, and his response was awesome. He said, well, instead of begging people who arrive timely and have been patiently waiting, I would suggest you just join the end of the line because at least 10 more groups of people have arrived after you, and they're now literally ahead of you. And when he said this, she was livid. Her face got red and I thought she was going to blow up, but the dad grabbed her and headed to the back of the line. Needless to say, she was very unhappy, and when the bus we were on pulled away, we could see her arguing or in a heated conversation with the dad. And while I do hope they made their flight, I kinda have a bad feeling that this was a really bad travel day for that entire family. Okay, I love this so much because seriously, if you're gonna be late, you better have a backup plan. Like, there's an entire line of people who are probably just as late for whatever they're going to do, but you don't see them running to the front and being like, guys, you don't get it. We're gonna be late for our flight that we didn't plan for properly. You've gotta let us go forward, please. It's like, dude, you've gotta be kidding right now. This is so stupid. Why on earth is it everybody else's fault that you're late instead of you and the rest of your family? Like, if you knew you're gonna be late, you probably should have left early. You should have left with so much time to spare that you would have been bored in that airport. And I would much rather be bored out of my mind wondering what to do next than to be rushed and like freaking out that I might miss my flight. Because at the end of the day, that is only gonna be my fault and no one else's.
Girlfriend cheated on him, so he stopped paying her car payments. She said that wasn't fair to her. So this happened to a friend of a friend, so the exact details are difficult to get. But this is what I was told. For ease of story and to hide identities, the names I will use are Jack and Jill. Bit of backstory, Jack and Jill had been going out for nearly 5 years by the point of this story. A year prior, Jill lost her job due to the company she worked for being liquidated. Money got tight for Jill, so Jack offered to help her by covering her car payments, monthly installments, road tax, insurance, and fuel, among other things, so that she could put the money she had to rent and utilities until she got a new job and was financially stable. Jack had a fairly decent job, so this wasn't a strain on his income. A year goes by and Jill was still unemployed, but not through rejections. She just got lazy and spent all of her day doing nothing around her house, whilst Jack was at work. One day, Jack got off work early and decided to surprise Jill on the way back home. But as he's approaching her house, he sees another car in her driveway. He parks on the street and sneaks up to the house and looks through the window to see Jill with another man. Jack was annoyed, but he didn't burst in there. He walked away, got into his car, and drove off. When Jack got home, he did a little digging and found out who the guy was through Facebook, and found out she'd been having an affair for half a year with this guy. He now was really annoyed and wanted revenge, and he knew the best way to do it. This is where the revenge comes in. Jill loved her car even though she barely used it. So what Jack did was stop all the payments that were going out of his bank account and put them onto her account. As the car was in her name, it was easy to do. As the payments had only just gone out, he had to wait for the end of the month for his revenge to unfold. The end of the month comes and Jill's bank card is declined at the shops. She calls the bank up to find out what's going on, and they tell her she's gone into overdraft because of the car payments going out of her account. Jill phoned Jack and asked why the payment is coming out of her accounts and not his. Jack coldly replied, "'Cause I know you cheated on me and I'm not going to pay for my ex-girlfriend's car," and he hung up. The fallout of the revenge was she tried to get Jack to pay for the car, even got lawsuits involved, but as she was the sole owner of the vehicle, it was declared that he had no legal responsibility to pay for her car. As she couldn't afford her road tax or insurance, she couldn't drive the car, and eventually she got so far behind in payments that the car was repossessed. To pay the debt, she had to get a minimum wage job and now takes the bus to and from work. In short, girlfriend cheats on boyfriend, boyfriend stops paying for her car, leaves her in massive debt. Was he the jerk? Oh boy. Well, I have to do this now. Jack and Jill have a relationship spill because he walked in and caught her. Jack steps back and switches banks, and Jill becomes a commuter. Sorry, that was the best I could do on short notice. Well, there's no doubt that Jill was a bad girlfriend and not at all loyal or grateful to him for his financial and emotional support over her unemployment and over their 5-year relationship in general, which doesn't really set her up as not the jerk. And the fact that she thought she was entitled to his financial support after the end of their relationship for no reason at all is kind of baffling. But, and hear me out here, this guy, instead of just breaking up with her as soon as he found out, basically calmly bided his time and worked out the most destructive way he could end things and leave her in a pile of debt. And I get that it's betrayal. I get that finding out you're being cheated on is freaking awful. I just don't see how instead of storming into her house and justifiably having a fricking row, the author strategically went home and worked out the best way to financially destroy this unemployed woman's life. And keeping the relationship going until the end of the month while using her passwords and things to set it all up with her bank is just so weird and cold-blooded. Just tell her you're done, stop the car payments, and end the relationship. Both parties are jerks in the narrator's book. Entitled mum thinks she has to be invited to everything, gets her husband to scream at us. Sandy is my uncle's girlfriend. No one in our family but my uncle likes Sandy. Why? Well, for starters, she's still married and living with her husband and daughter. He's apparently cool with the uncle because they are, quote, separated. Secondly, she's a huge narcissist and throws a tantrum every time she doesn't get her way. About a month into my uncle and her dating, we were going to take family pictures, and she's there with her daughter. We ask her for a few pictures with just my grandma and her kids and grandkids, but that didn't go over well at all. Sandy starts screaming that she's dating my uncle, so that means she and her daughter are family too, and deserve to be in the pictures just as much as anyone else. Sandy has even stalked my grandma, who's only 4'9" and in her late 70s. Back in March, when the pandemic was starting, my grandma was still living alone, so she had to do her own errands. My grandma went to Costco one day, and there was Sandy casually running into my grandma. Sandy was thinking about getting a Costco membership, but she doesn't like the Costco that's 30 minutes closer to her. Then a few weeks later, she shows up at the same pharmacy that my grandma goes to, because Sandy's pharmacy didn't have the medicine she needed, so they sent her to the one that was 35 minutes away. Sandy also showed up at my grandma's bank on the exact day that my grandma decided to open a savings account for her grandkids. Sandy asked my grandma about what she was doing, and when my grandma told her, Sandy launched into a fit because, "What about my daughter? She's technically your grandkid too." My uncle and her had only been dating for about 3 or 4 months at that point. Just as my grandma was about to say something, the bank's security came over and asked if my grandma was okay. They knew her from decades of her banking there, as well as all of her kids and grandkids, so when my grandma said no, they immediately escorted Sandy out. Shortly after that, my grandma moved states to live with my aunt, and that's so far been the last stalking incident. On Thanksgiving, we all did a Zoom dinner instead of having a big gathering. About half an hour into the meal, my uncle's phone starts going crazy. Guess who it is? It's Sandy. She starts demanding to know why she wasn't invited and goes into full tantrum mode. So my uncle caves and sends her the link. As soon as she gets on, Sandy starts screaming and her daughter, Amy, who's 12, is running around in the background screaming and crying that it's not fair. Sandy starts calling us all selfish jerks, and then her husband, remember the man she lives with, not my uncle, starts yelling at us that we can't do that to his wife. My grandma has had enough of Sandy and scoffed at her. "See? This is why nobody here likes you. This is why we do everything without you. This is why I'm so glad that you and that rabid kid of yours aren't invited to my granddaughter's wedding." No big dramatic ending, we just ended the call because everyone was super angry. We decided to do another one without my uncle this time, and that was fine. No, thank you. First of all, I'm going to clarify that although it's odd, I'm not going to question the fact that Sandy is married and living with her husband whilst in a relationship with the uncle. If they're separated, sure, she just hasn't moved out and they're co-parenting or something. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt there. But let's get past that. Yeah, Sandy is a bit bloody psychotic and the jerk of this story. The uncle shouldn't just keep inviting her to things to appease her if she's going to just act out like that, and if she's trying to force her way into the family. I'm sorry you're lonely, Sandy, but that is definitely not how you work your way into people's hearts and become part of everything. And you definitely don't stalk your prospective mother-in-law so blatantly. I mean, seriously, how was she getting such comprehensive information on where the old lady was going to be at any given time? I'll also say I wonder why Sandy's husband was so involved in trying to get her integrated with the new family. Is he just the most supportive co-parent in the world with a good friendship with her? Or is he trying to get her out of his house and out of his hands? Who knows? Calm the frick down, Sandy. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. I spoke to the manager and he said it was okay. Well, let's call and find out. Some backstory. A buddy of mine's family runs a small convenience store and bait and tackle shop in the US, and I help out every now and then since I work at a gas station. Like most other stores, the shop is currently operating at a one toilet paper or paper towel item per family policy. My friend's dad, the owner, told me in person that no one is allowed to buy more than one per family. No ifs, ands, or buts. Cue the scene. I'm waiting out the last half hour of when I said I'd help run the store on my own, when entitled dad and his kid walk in, decked out in fishing gear. The dad grabs a packet of worms, some sodas, ice, and snacks. As he passes by the toiletries section, he grabs 4 packages of toilet paper. So I say, "I'm sorry, sir, but store policy is currently only 1 per family." I call that out across the store, but this guy ignores me. He and his kid select a few more things and walk up to the counter. The kid is trying really hard not to be seen, so I can tell he knows what's coming. I say again, "Sir, unfortunately I'm only able to sell you 1 toilet paper package right now." The dad was already getting angry and red. Well, why not? Due to the pandemic and shortage, our store is only allowing 1 toilet paper item per family. Well, there's no sign back there. Yes, there is, sir. There's a sign every 6 feet around the store and at the register listing what items are being limited to. Well, I know the owner, and he says it's okay for me to buy as many as I want from here. The embarrassed kid has now retreated to the door, clearly wanting to leave and not be here. I said, "You spoke to the owner?" Dad was just scarlet at this point. "Yes, I did. Now, are you gonna ring me up or what?" "The owner specifically said that you could buy however much you wanted." "Yes. Can you please hurry it up? I want to be on the lake soon." "Sir, I know the manager didn't say anything to you because I'd have known about it." "Are you calling me a liar? I'm reporting you to the owner next time I talk to him." I pull out my phone. "How about now?" What? I call the owner and put the phone on speaker. "Let's call him right now. If he says it's okay, I'll ring you up and apologize." Before the dad can say anything else, the store owner picks up. "Hey Matt, what's up?" "Oh, nothing much. I have this guy here and he says you told him he could ignore store policy on toilet paper." "Sir, can I have your name so I know who I told?" The dad's face breaks out in hope, thinking that he's bluffed his way through this, and gives his name. There's a pause and then the store owner speaks again. "Look, I don't know who the heck you are or what the frick you're talking about. I haven't told anyone that they could ignore store policy. If you buy more than 1, you're possibly depriving others that may desperately need it. And if you're on the john so much that you need more than 1 package, I'd seriously suggest you consult a doctor, not just buy more paper. If you can't follow store policy like every other customer that's come in, then you can leave." He hangs up. The dad has his mouth open in shock, while the embarrassed kid is looking like all major holidays and his birthday are happening today. The dad shuts his mouth, stands in front of the register for a few seconds, shouts a final "F you" and storms out of the store, leaving all of his items at the counter. In short, entitled dad tries to bluff his way into bypassing store policy. So I call the store owner to call him on it. The store owner calls him out on being entitled. Excellent. Take that, Ken. Which for those of you who don't know is what we call a male Karen here. I will say that this is the first case I've seen of a Ken rather than a Karen trying to use this tactic, but of course it makes sense. Yeah, look, the lockdown and shortages stage of the pandemic seems so long ago, so it can be easy to ask what the big deal is now. But I say screw this entitled dude. He's literally trying to take items that are in short supply away from other people who need them, and clearly understands that the laws are in place enough to lie into the bargain. Also, have to love his kid being so tired of his crap that he's actively rooting for his dad's downfall. I know it's normal for teenagers to actively root against their own parents, but every now and again you should probably check whether they're doing it for regular stupid teen reasons or maybe because your behavior is actually that awful. And now I'm remembering all the videos of people actually brawling over fricking toilet paper 4 years ago. Let's hope that we never have to go through anything like that again, folks. We're clearly not built for it. Both a mother and father called the cops on me because I was a nice person and wouldn't give them my car? Okay, so a little bit of background. Where I live, there's this car show held in memory of someone in our town who died of brain cancer, and all proceeds go to research for that illness. The show is held at a raceway nearby, where everyone is welcoming and kids get in for free while the parents have to pay $2 Australian to get in, while the people entering the car show, or are going to go around the track, pay a premium. Now, the story. I'd entered my car into the car show and paid extra for it to go around the track during the time event. The car show part was for a few hours before the warm-up, before the time trials, where anyone entering could go up to 3 practice laps to get used to the course. Now, this is where the child came in. Before the practice laps start, the kid said that he liked my car, a 1977 Leyland Mini, and he started asking me about it and how I got it. Everything was normal. My family, who was with me, said I should let him sit in it, and I agreed, but thought I could take it a step further and let the kid sit in the passenger seat during one of my warm-up laps. I said to him I'd let him go around the track with me just as long as I had his parents' permission. When he heard this, his little face lit up and he went to go get his parents. I thought all was normal until the following happened. I was waiting around for the kid and his parents to show up. I hadn't moved from my spot and was doing some pre-checks on my car before I went out. 20 minutes had passed and I thought it was taking a little too long for him to come back to give me an answer, but I thought I'd wait just a little longer just in case he was lost. Next thing I know, another 20 minutes have passed and then another. I'd waited an hour for him to show back up and I needed to get on the track. My car was ready half an hour ago and I'd already gotten permission from the race organizers to have a young passenger for 1 lap of the practice run. I'd gotten tired and went to start the car when the kid actually showed up with his parents, the entitled pair. They instantly asked me if I was up to something. By the way, I just turned 18 at the time and had my girlfriend with me at the race, keeping track of my times. I told them I just wanted to give a kid a chance to see what it was like in a road race car, just like how someone else had let me when I was his age. After hearing that, they took a few steps back and started talking, but they took 10 minutes to do so. Tired of waiting, I told them it was final call. It's either yes or no and I need to get on the track now. They gave me the stink eye and finally said that their kid could go with me. I had him get in and put the 5-point belt on and we headed for the first practice run. I told him to hold on and don't scream while I'm driving. He seems to understand, but during the lap he did the exact opposite. Once it was over, I had a headache and was still trying to be nice and I asked him if he had fun. He said he did and wanted to go again. I said from now on I had to be by myself and he started yelling at me and got out of the car, slamming the door behind him. I just had it at that point and went to do my last 2 laps. Once they were over, we stopped for a quick break, and this is where everything went downhill. First up, I had the entitled parents come up to me and yell at me for not letting their kid go again. I explained to them that I technically wasn't allowed and only got permission to do 1 lap. They were livid. The next thing I know is one of the organizers said to them their kid could go around the track in one of the rental trucks with his father, but it would cost $300 dues. The entitled kid said no and that he wanted to go around in my car. But I said that he couldn't. The next thing I know, the entitled father is yelling at how it's a rip-off, and we're wasting money on people who are going to die anyway. I lost it at that point and told him to leave, but the organizer said what they said was fine and we don't need to make this work. I left with the organizer after that to avoid more of a confrontation. Skip forward half an hour and the time trial is about to start, and guess who came back? It's the mother this time. She said she was sorry and wanted to talk. I said later, and she yelled out $400 and was offering up $400 dues for my entire car. I told her no and to get out of here. Next thing I know, Dad rocks up and says $700. I said no and that I have more money in the car than they probably have in their bank. The father responded, saying that my sad, rusted piece of crap is not worth more than $1,000 and that I'd get more from crushing it than selling it. I told them to leave as they wouldn't like what would happen next if they got in my way. I hopped in my car and drove off right past them. Once the time trial was over, I went to park in my spot to find my girlfriend and grandfather being talked to by cops, while the entitled parents were pointing at me. 2 officers came over and told me to turn off and get out of the vehicle. I did so and asked what was going on. The entitled parents had called the cops, claiming I stole their car and touched their son when I had him in the car. I told the cops the car was in my name and I have footage inside from a camera in my car that I use for studying my driving techniques. They asked to see the footage and I willingly showed them. They said I'd done nothing wrong and I had my parents bring down the proof of sale for my car. The entitled pair kept trying to screw me over until the father hit a bystander. The cops arrested him for assault and took the wife in as an accomplice. I haven't heard anything from them, but now one of the officers from the incident is a good friend who I go to drag races with. So at least something good came out of this. Oh, come on. Who decides that calling the cops over an easily disprovable false theft is in any way a good idea? If they wanted to nail you for anything, they should have just left it with their frankly morally revolting fake charges of inappropriate behavior with kids, because they couldn't have known that you'd have the video proof in your car. But stupidity aside, they just seem like awful, greedy, grasping people. They suspected you of bad motives from the start because bad motives are all they seem to possess. Then they tried to screw you out of a car because their kid wanted it, after you'd shown them some kindness and taken their son for a fun ride, alternating their bad offers with personal insults and telling you that the car they very clearly wanted was crap. And of course, the dad just decided to go fists flying and whack someone. At that point, there wasn't any doubt that they couldn't have anything they said taken seriously. Just reprehensible jerks on every level that's presented to us. I hope that the kid got taken into child services soon, because that's the only way he was getting any good parental role models going forward. I told Karen that I slept with her husband. Okay, so I never thought I'd actually have my own story to tell on here. I'm still not completely convinced it wasn't a fever dream. If not for a neighbor dropping by to ask me what the heck happened last night, I probably would have dismissed it as a fever dream. But enough preface, let's get into it. So I was hoping, thanks to COVID, this wouldn't be a problem. But the kids in my neighborhood keep coming to my door on Halloween for candy. Every year I tell them that no, I'm not giving it out and to go somewhere else. I've also gone so far as to put out signs telling them to shove off and leave me alone every October. But the little jerks just seem to take it as a challenge. They'll repeatedly ring the doorbell until I come out or they get bored. Once they went 5 whole minutes before they went away. Or they'll keep coming back to my place after I tell them no, hoping I'll change my mind, which I never do. This year, one particularly persistent little brat from the next cul-de-sac over made it her mission to wear me down for candy every year. She rang the doorbell and I told her nicely, or as nicely as you can tell someone who repeatedly ignores the big red sign saying that my house is not for trick-or-treating, that I don't have any candy. She looks at me with what she probably thought were adorable puppy dog eyes and asked me if I would mind checking. I tell her there is absolutely no candy in my house, nor will there ever be. That was a lie, but she didn't know that. Then the little monster gets it into her head that I'm lying and keeps asking me if I'm sure. I tell her that I'm diabetic. I'm not, but she apparently doesn't know what that means. One Google search on my phone later and she accuses me of lying about having it. I mean, I am, but that's not the point. I suppose I could have just given her a Hershey bar, but I didn't really want her spreading the triumphant news to all the other little monsters of how she finally got the mean lady to succumb to her will, at the risk of any of them following her example. So I just tell her that I don't have to give candy to anybody who's going to be so rude as to deny my very serious medical condition, and I close the door. About an hour later, I'm hate-watching the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula movie. It's a train wreck, but I can't help it. Then I get another ring on the doorbell. I come down to find the little abomination peeking out from behind the legs of a very angry-looking entitled mother. The following exchange goes down. I say, "How can I help you, Mom?" "My daughter says you're repeatedly refusing to give her candy." "I'm sorry, I don't have any." "This callous attitude towards the festivities is unacceptable. It's Halloween. You should have prepared for it." I didn't think any kids would be trick-or-treating this year thanks to a certain virus. "Well, after everything they've been through, we as a community owe it to them to make up for all the fun they've missed out on this year." I say, "Look, I get where you're coming from, but it's 10 p.m. I'm not going to get up and go pick up a bag of Tootsie Rolls at this ungodly hour just so that your one kid can have the full Halloween experience." It's here that Mummy Dearest takes it upon herself to give me a lecture on the importance of participating in the community. I told her that maybe if she wasn't such an entitled Karen, Her husband would be more eager to participate in the bedroom with her instead of me. This is where I may have been kind of a jerk. What I said was nothing more than a heat-of-the-moment remark, but the woman went absolutely ballistic upon hearing it. She freaked out and started screaming about whether or not her husband was sleeping with me. Apparently the guy did go on some kind of business trip recently, and my little quip set off all the red flags in her head. She starts demanding to know if her hubby was in my house, trying to crane her neck around to see me inside and shrieking at him to come out. At this point, I'm tired, I'm on the verge of a food coma from all the grocery store goodies I've binged on, and I'm 100% done with all of this crap. So I tell her to come back with a warrant and I shut the door on her, in spite of her attempts to wedge her way in. I can still hear her meltdown on my way up to the stairs, now joined in disharmony with her daughter demanding to know what is going on. I look out the window of my bedroom to see her angrily punching a number on her phone and dialing up who I think was her husband. The poor man got an earful. I didn't catch everything she said, but at one point she mentioned something about how he has no business cheating when she could have taken advantage of his absence with her brother-in-law after he came on to her at their anniversary party, but she had spared her husband's feelings by not doing anything with it. She's being so loud that she draws the attention of other trick-or-treating families in the neighborhood. Anybody unfortunate enough to ask what's going on gets treated to a first-hand soundbite of her marital problems. One neighbor goes so far as to come out of his house and asks her to take this someplace where she isn't disrupting the ambiance. This prompts her to turn her wrath on him and shriek at him to mind your own beeswax. This poor man barely gets away with his life. It was like watching an episode of Maury unfolding, if Maury Povich was an elderly Asian man. At this point, I was seriously scared that she was going to come and try to break into my house looking for proof that her husband was there. I considered just coming out and admitting to her that I was yanking her chain, but the ball was already in motion and I doubted whether my confession would save her marriage at this point. Fortunately, after she ended the call, she stormed off with her now hysterical crotch goblin in tears. I felt a little bad for turning what should have been a fun night for the kid into such a traumatic experience, but maybe now she'll not knock at my door next year. In short, kid tries to get her mum to bully me into giving her candy, gets a first-hand seat for witnessing the collapse of her parents' marriage instead. And to all the people telling me I'm a bitter, hateful hag, if not wanting to waste money contributing to strangers' kids' junk food addictions makes me a hag, then I guess I'm a hag. I can live with that. To the people telling me this story is fake because this could never happen at 10 p.m., you deeply underestimate how late kids are willing to stay up if it means more candy, as well as how badly some parents relish the chance to be free of their little angels for one more hour. As for why they're so obsessed with wheedling candy out of me, I think it's become something of a challenge in my neighborhood to finally get the mean neighborhood lady to crack, because I'm the only one in the neighborhood who refuses to partake every year. Other people eventually cave in and leave out bowls, but bowls run out and that means the little hell spawns get back to knocking, hoping you've got some extra Milky Way bars in your pantry to spare. Which is why I don't do that either. To the people asking me why I didn't turn off my porch lights, my neighborhood watch has this thing where you have to leave your lights on during Halloween so that the kids can feel safer and are less likely to get lost. If you don't do it, everyone gets really hostile and passive-aggressive with you for the rest of the year, and it's really not worth it. That's why I put up the sign instead. To all the people telling me I'm in the wrong for thinking Bram Stoker's Dracula is a hot mess, it is. It doesn't deserve its status as an Academy Award-winning feature. The acting is either lackluster or way too hammy, the special effects have aged horribly, and at one point Mina gets forcibly grabbed and pinned down by her one true love, while she begs him to stop. So romantic. Truly a love for the ages. It's fun to laugh at as a terrible movie, but it's hardly a pinnacle of cinema. I won't apologize for my stance, accept it. So with all said and done, am I the jerk? Well, author, you might be a bitter, hateful hag, but this was entertaining and I frickin' loved it. Why should you have to participate in Halloween if you don't want to? Where I lived growing up, you might have risked us egging your house, but obviously you feel like this is your stand to make, and you're absolutely right. That kid should absolutely have just quit while they were ahead. Accusing a stranger of faking a medical condition that you don't even know exists yourself is a risky game. And what do you get out of it if you win in this case? Nothing. The lady didn't want to give up her candy. I will say that the author's dig at the mother was mean and childish, but I still loved it. A bit of jerk-on-jerk action may not solve anything, but it sure gave us a good story. I'm sorry for the loss of your marriage, entitled mother. Maybe you can move on to the brother-in-law now and he'll treat you better. If not, put all that energy you clearly have into a worthy cause and turn away from the Karen lifestyle, because screaming at strangers for candy isn't a good use of anyone's time. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Sending trucks to the wrong state to screw over a staff sergeant. So back when I was in my first unit, we had to ship all of our 7-ton trucks off to go get up-armored. That meant over a year or so we shipped them all from South Carolina to Wisconsin. I was in charge of logistics at the time, so I coordinated it all and loaded the trucks. Overall, a pretty easy task. The only challenge was the documentation. Anyway, it was all going well until this new staff sergeant showed up in the motor pool. He was an absolute jerk. Just treated everyone like absolute crap. He made my life miserable when I tried to ship these trucks. Like, I didn't want to, it wasn't overly fun. Sometimes it even required me to work on weekends, so I'd have been happy just not doing it at all. However, I had to, as headquarters had ordered it, so there was no reason for him to be angry with me. Anyways, so once he took over, shipping these trucks became an even worse pain in the butt, because he'd want to micromanage because I was lower rank. So I let him, and he wanted to sign crap. So I made up lines for him to sign. And then finally, I'd had it with him. One day, I decided since he wanted to sign and be important, I would screw him over. So when my next big shipment, like 4 trucks, came along, I decided that instead of sending them to Wisconsin like they were supposed to go, I'd send them somewhere else. I decided 29 Palms, California would be a great location for them. So I changed some codes on the sheets, gave them to the prick staff sergeant who made more jerk comments, and signed blindly without knowing what he was doing. So off we shipped these trucks. Well, a couple of weeks later, the call comes in that our trucks never arrived. So the command starts getting worried that a few trucks have gone missing. They came to our shop and we just informed them that this staff sergeant had taken charge of all the shipments lately. So they went to him and he proudly said he'd taken over. But he crumbled when they asked him where the trucks were. It took them a couple of weeks, but finally a call from 29 Palms came into our command that they had these trucks show up, but nobody had claimed them. The command flipped their crap. As far as they were concerned, this stupid freaking staff sergeant got involved in crap he didn't need to get involved in and sent 4 big trucks across the country instead of where they needed to be. He got told to leave the logistics to the logistics department, and I had the whole thing solved in an hour. So for those complaining about taxpayer dollars, you obviously haven't been in the military. I had jerk leaders like this cost far more than a couple of trucks because they couldn't let the experts just do their jobs. One example was we had a C-130 fly from Bahrain to Jordan to pick up cargo. I was meant to load it, but the senior leadership didn't think I needed to go because a random non-logistics officer was at that base to load. So the C-130 flew internationally to get the cargo, was never loaded, and then flew back. So the C-130 had to be sent back to Jordan the next day to get the cargo, all because someone had stuck their nose where it didn't belong. There are tons of other stories of crappy leadership messing up your tax dollars. After this, the staff sergeant never even stepped foot in the logistics office, so perhaps he learnt a lesson. What do you think on balance? Am I a jerk? Wow! So this was eye-opening to the narrator in that it revealed that incompetent middle managers aren't just restricted to civilian jobs. Maybe I should have suspected, but I kinda thought that people in the armed forces would have better things to do than looming over their employees' work and creating more checks and balances to create the appearance of activity. But clearly, I should have known better. I do know that everyone I've ever known who's been deployed has essentially told me that their work is about 80% waiting around for things to happen. I guess if you're at a higher level, it must be quite hard to not look like you're lollygagging between jobs. As for whether the author is the jerk, I mean, Yes, but a jerk vigilante to be sure. I mean, whether these trucks were driven or shipped, a massive amount of resources were put into their delivery, which was knowingly done in a way that would waste time and money to get a guy in trouble. But as our author explained, it likely saved the logistics department a lot of hassle in the future and probably re-streamlined things a bit. So we'll say that, once again, everyone sucks, but I do understand where the author is coming from. My grandma tried to ruin my brother's wedding. My brother's wedding was 2 years ago, but this still annoys me every time it comes to mind. My grandmother is rather histrionic. If she isn't the center of attention, she will make herself the center of attention. So it was my brother's wedding and I was his best man. I have a tiny car and needed to be at the wedding venue early, and my grandma was going to be picked up by my parents later. She wasn't anywhere near ready and I needed to leave, so I assumed all was well at this point. We set everything up at the venue and took photos and got ready for the ceremony, and finally my parents arrived with my grandma in tow. She was already irate and causing a scene because I had, quote, abandoned her when I left her for the venue. We managed to get her to calm down, but I could see my brother was already getting disappointed with the situation. He just wanted everything to go right, and he's too nice to say anything to our grandmother. Things went okay for a while until we were seating her in the chapel, and she wasn't getting to sit with my mum and dad at the very front where the parents of the bride and groom had the place of honor. Once more, she made a big scene until she was moved to the front next to my parents. My brother was red with embarrassment as everyone from both families had pretty much filed into the chapel. Once more, things calmed back down once she had her way. The last straw was at the reception. Everyone was eating and having a good time. I was going around checking on the tables to make sure everything was going well and people were being taken care of. Then I got to my grandma's table. I don't remember exactly what she said, as I just kind of lost it at that point, and it was 2 years ago, but it was something like, "Why is this taking so long? If they aren't going to get the reception moving along, I need you to take me home." And I replied with something like, "I still have to give the best man speech for a while, and you aren't going to be asking mum and dad to take you back." Then she said the words, and she said this to me growing up all the time whenever I said anything about school or something I'd learned or disagreed about, and it basically instantly triggered me. The words were, "Don't you get smart with me, you little crap." I saw red, and I said something to get her to come outside the venue, and then I got vicious. I didn't yell because I didn't want to draw attention to the situation, but anyone within line of sight could easily know I was really annoyed. I told her something along the lines of, "You need to sit down and shut the frick up. This is my brother's wedding and he still believes you're this amazing person that he wants in his life. But I've seen through to the vile witch you are for years now. You mistreat and bully my mum and you're trying to do the same crap to my brother now. Your bullcrap will never fly with me. I know what you are, and if you don't get back in there and pretend that you're having a great time, you'll have nothing to do with my life." She was weakly fighting back with, "How dare you talk to your elders like that?" I handed her the keys to my car and told her she could leave if she absolutely couldn't stand the reception, but if she did, she'd never be invited to anything in my life. Not my wedding, not my graduation, not even to see any grandchildren I might have in the future. I told her she'd be lucky if she saw me again before she died. Apparently, she either didn't care or thought I was bluffing, because she left. I haven't seen her since, which was my choice, and she complains to my mum that I don't talk to her anymore. I specifically sent her what looked like an invitation that told her she wasn't invited to my wedding. Then she wasn't invited to my graduation, and after learning about the racist comments she made about Caucasian me and my Asian wife and how it was good we hadn't had any children yet because the world doesn't need any more Asian babies, I fricking hate her guts. I'd like to say some part of me still loves her, but after everything, I can't stand even the thought of her. If there was any chance I could forgive her for how she tried to ruin my brother's wedding, her racist bullcrap pretty much solidified my determination that she'd never meet her grandchildren, and that I'm not even sure I'd be willing to visit her on her deathbed. I don't know if I overreacted or if I'm a bad person for responding like this, but I watched for 18 years as she emotionally bullied my mum over and over again, and my dad by proxy. She'd always doted on me and my brother, but when she acted like that at my brother's wedding, all of that came boiling to the surface and I tore into her. A lot of people are asking if my brother has seen the light, and the answer is kind of, but he's a lot nicer and more gullible than me and writes her crap off as, "It's just how she is, but she's family." My grandma took great effort when we were growing up to let us know that blood is thicker than water, and that your friends will always leave, but your family will always be there. I never bought into it because my friends were always more supportive and reliable than my family. My brother did buy into it. Oh, and my car was fine, she didn't sabotage it. That thought never crossed my mind as a possibility. My grandma is terrified of car wrecks due to a wreck in her youth that seriously messed her up. Also, I probably assumed that she was aware that I wouldn't hesitate to call the police on her or anything like that. What a vile, hateful old bet. You see, viewers, there are elder folks who say slightly questionable things because it's part of their ingrained vocabulary, and there are the same people who might still give a bit of side-eye to lifestyles that are strange to them but who try and keep it under wraps and accept others as they are, and then there are people like this witch. To make things clearer for us, we're given a bit of perspective into how awful she was before she had the excuse of advanced age. A bullying, mean-spirited attention hog who couldn't go a few seconds without saying something mean for attention. At first, I thought the author's response was a bit sudden and extreme, but having the context of what he's witnessed from this woman his whole life gives a bit of insight on why he was probably justified in letting out some steam. It sounds like both he and his brother were way better off without the venomous crone darkening their wedding ceremonies, so I'd say everyone wins. Now, if you can just get your parents to stop moving on her whims as well, maybe she'll have some time to reflect and come out of it better. Maybe not. Frankly, I'd say you don't have to care anymore. Vindictive teacher gives a test with the wrong answers, and her students unite to get her fired. A little bit of background first. My 8th grade year of middle school, we had one of our teachers leave at the very beginning of the year to go and teach at another district. So, the school's administration had to find a replacement in very little time, and about 2 weeks into the school year, they hired a teacher I'll call Miss E. Immediately, she gave off a vibe that screamed, "I'm only nice when my boss is in the room." The next few months went by, and the majority of the students who had her as a teacher all agreed that she had no idea how to teach. Nor did she make any effort to show the students some respect. I'm talking daily incidents of her picking on the class, complaining about not getting work done, and then wasting 20 minutes of class time while complaining. Miss E was also the type of teacher to pick favorites and pick on kids she didn't like as much. She absolutely hated me, as I often made it a point to start messing with her during class after realizing what kind of person she really was. Stuff like getting a whole group of people to move their desk an inch forward every few seconds. We also got access to her in-class phone number, which we spent a lot of time calling her on, just to see her reaction. A whole lot of other incidents occurred in that class which would tell some great stories by their own, but I'll keep this short since it's already pretty lengthy. In May of that year, we were finishing a unit on a book and took a test on it. The test was created by Miss E and had a lot of errors in it. Some of the test questions referred to very small details of the book, or contradictory story pieces that made no sense. We got the tests back about a week later, with the highest grade in class being a 70%. This clearly isn't right, so a few of us, a group of about 5 people including me, went to talk to her about it, even showing evidence from the book that some of the questions that were wrong happened to be right, or there were 2 answers, a few other things, and Mrs. E refused to listen to any of us. She told us all to sit down. She got up and went on about how she felt, word for word, personally attacked and undermined, and had something made up about how the 2 points don't matter when our concern was focused on the whole test. Remember how she referenced being personally attacked? Next thing she starts talking about is my personal grade on it, and how I went to her and attacked her about my grade. This went on for a while, mainly back and forth between me and her, for about 2 days in front of the whole class. At times, people would speak up and agree or add something I would say, but in the end it turned out to be a debate between Miss E and I. So, what did we do? After the first day, as soon as I got home, I turned on the computer, opened Gmail and wrote about 4 pages worth of description and complaints to our principal and vice principal. I was brought down to the office the next day where I was given a detention written by Miss E, given for insubordination, intrusive undermining, and disrupting instruction. Total bullcrap. So I told him I wasn't going. He asked me to verify most of the information and elaborate on some of the incidents I'd described. His idea was to have me form a group of all the people involved and have us write a list of complaints and incidents from the class. And if all the info matched up, I'd get off without punishment. As a group of about 10 students, we wrote 17 pages of grievances and evidence that Miss E was clearly not fit for teaching middle school students. The principals read all of it at once, and for the next week of class time, we worked on other classes while the principals interviewed everyone in class, including Miss E. After it was all over, Miss E was required to give a formal apology, where she spouted out some fake tears and a bullcrap written-up apology that ignored the majority of the problems we were actually referring to. My detention was waived, and next year she was no longer teaching in our school district. In short, new teacher had a knack for arguing with students over a test she clearly botched, so we talked to the principal. We received a formal apology and she received unemployment. Was she the jerk, or were we being little craps? Good lord. And that is an unemployment well earned. Look, Miss E, you could have kept that job if you'd just done the bare minimum and tried to avoid being noticed. There's an art to running a job where you have no idea what you're doing. People do it all the time, and I am absolutely certain that there are teachers it applies to as well. And if you don't know what the frick you're doing, for the love of God, don't start kicking up a fuss. Accept the salary, use the materials the former teacher left behind, Google everything, make sure your students don't hate you, and you might make a solid C+ teacher. Use online resources to help make your tests, keep learning whatever you can when you can, and maybe you'll eventually even be a good one. Don't do what Miss E did. Dad gets fired for bullcrap reasons, plays the long game, ends up in charge, takes the extended family on a cruise. My dad had worked at the same company for almost 30 years before he was abruptly fired for complete bullcrap. He was coordinating an upcoming meeting of people who had to fly in from around the country. One important participant resigned unexpectedly, so Dad cancelled the meeting via email and explained why. Apparently, that counted as improperly communicating privileged information, and he was fired the next day. All this happened a week after Dad's boss retired and was replaced by a new guy who wanted to cut costs. What a coincidence. This was about 10 years ago, near the height of the recession. Dad was in his 50s and hadn't interviewed for a job since the early 1980s. He wasn't sure he'd ever find another job. My mum went back to work at a school to pay the bills, while Dad scraped together what he could doing some crappy online consulting gigs for basically minimum wage. They managed to keep their heads above water, but only barely. Dad was out of work for a year and a half. He finally landed a job at a new company 3 states away from their old home, coincidentally about an hour away from where my wife and I lived, and were expecting Dad's first grandchild. Mum and Dad moved to live about 20 minutes away from us. They paid off the mortgage on their house, so they decided to keep it and rent it out, planning to retire there in a few years. The new company treated Dad very well. Better salary than he had made at old company, good benefits, and respect from his co-workers and superiors. A year later, Mum and Dad were able to buy a second, smaller house near their grandkids. Dad mentioned a few things about his time at old company to his new bosses. Nothing confidential or anything, more like overall strengths and weaknesses. Of course, the story of how he got fired came out as well. It turns out that when you work at a company for over 25 years, you learn a thing or two about how it works, and cutting costs by firing experienced employees can make your company vulnerable. New company started to get very interested. They saw an important business opportunity and also a chance to get revenge on behalf of a valued employee. A couple of years later, new company bought old company. They were both big companies, and mergers of this size take time. But when the dust settled, it was clear that there were redundancies, divisions and products that both companies had, that new company only needed one of. They kept as many of old company's people as they could, and very few lost their jobs. Except, of course, for the people responsible for firing Dad. New company put Dad in charge of the building he used to work in, at old company, and let him choose his employees, both from old and new companies. Dad had to move back to his old state, so the new company helped sell his house in the new state and gave him a moving stipend of several $1,000s. But Mum and Dad were just moving back to their own house. They sold their new house that they had made payments and improvements on for 5 years for a nice profit. With that money plus the moving stipend, they paid off debts, saved for retirement, and took me, my siblings, and our spouses, and the grandkids on a cruise. Since people are asking, I never heard exactly what transpired when the guy who fired Dad got downsized, but lately we got together and I was actually able to just ask him. Dad wouldn't say. Exit interviews are supposed to stay private. I told him about this post, with all the names left out, that people wanted to know, and he just grinned and said, "That would be improperly communicating privileged information." Yeah, I'd say that's about as satisfying a revenge story as it gets. And the author is absolutely right. If you're going to step on people on your way up the hierarchy, you never know what's going to come back and hurt you later. And it was a very unexpected comeback, I'll bet. Do you think the guy who fired the author's dad stepped into that final interview and had his blood run cold at this ghost from the past come to exact vengeance? Can't say for sure, but it is fun and satisfying to think about. As a guy who got let go of during the pandemic, I do very much envy your dad for being able to find a job during the equally grim employment desert of the recession. Sounds like he had it made after that period of hardship. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My mum turned her guest room into a nursery after I told her she'll never meet my child. I'm currently pregnant with my first child, and both my mum and stepdad have been terrible to me and my partner the entire time. Told us we would be unfit parents because we aren't married yet, legitimately screamed at my partner for knocking up their little girl, even though we planned the pregnancy. They'd call him every day and harass him, showing up at his work, trying to convince him to leave me so I'd have no choice but to move back in with them. It got worse as time went on. I finally decided to cut contact with them. Having a child can already be a stressful time, and having them around to make it worse was not something I was okay with. My partner and I have gone through a lot with family drama the past couple of years, and having this baby has been one of the most exciting things for us. If my parents can't be nice to my partner, then they don't get to see our baby. Plus, they're the kind of people who don't wear masks in public and actively choose to be in large gatherings with no social distancing. So them seeing a newborn in 2020 is out of the question. One day I sent my mum a very detailed email of why she wasn't allowed to be a part of my life anymore and will not be seeing her grandchild. To make things even better, I also noted that we'll be moving across the country shortly after she's born to be closer with other family members. So not only is she cut off, but we're literally moving far away and never coming back. She responds by showing up at our house at 11 p.m., screaming outside our door about how it's her baby and she deserves to be there for it. I told her to F off and eventually she leaves. Months go by and she'll text me randomly asking about technical problems with her Wi-Fi router or something and needing help. Little things that don't mean much to me, and I sent her the info she needed. My cousin also had a virtual baby shower and sent my invitation to my mum's house accidentally, so my mum came by to give it to me. Things slowly came to a point where we were fairly amicable with each other, but I still stood my ground about our boundaries and nothing else had changed. She knew this. Then she sent me a video today that blew my mind. She had redecorated her entire guest room to be a nursery. Crib, changing table, $400 worth of newborn baby clothes, toy chest, stroller, a car seat for her car, and the list goes on. In the video, she's in tears, saying, "Oh my god, I can't believe my baby is going to be here soon. This is where she'll sleep, where I'll change her little diapers. These will be her toys." Is she psychotic? Her baby? Sleeping and living at her house? What? So I call her up immediately and I reiterate that we're still moving across the country and that she'll have no contact with the baby before that. Her response? "Oh, okay, we'll see about that." I'm genuinely confused. What part of "you'll have no contact with this baby" does she not understand? Or things will change in the next few weeks when she's born? Is she planning on stealing her from us? I'm at loss for words. I've been seeing a psychotherapist the past few months, strictly due to the relationship I've had with my mother throughout my life, and all that is documented. My midwife and hospital are also very aware of the situation and the emotional stress I've been going through. So we'll definitely be utilizing this in case she tries to sue us or calls CPS. Also, due to the virus, only my partner is allowed to be with me during the birth anyway. We'll be keeping things hush until after we move. We would have moved a few months ago if that was financially possible for us. We also spent a lot of money on my birth center here that's non-refundable. She's due in August and our lease ends in September. We already have everything set up to move and our other family is helping us out. We're just playing the waiting game at this point. My partner is my power of attorney if something happens to me during birth. We're currently in a state that is against grandparents' rights. The only way she'd be able to sue for visitation is if both myself and my partner were deceased. Even after we move, she still cannot file for GPS if she's living in this state. Okay, update. So I gave birth about a week ago at home, and my partner and I are so happy with our new addition. We've been quarantined since the second she was born, and our pediatrician recommended for us to keep the baby home for at least 2 months to keep her safe from the virus. My mum calls me after the birth, crying about how upset she is that I didn't invite her to be present for the birth, and also to congratulate me on giving birth to her baby. Then asks when she can come and see it. My partner and I, along with the consult of a lawyer, agreed that my mother could see her one time through a car window. There would be no touching or holding of any kind, just a simple viewing. I'd told her this and her response was that she would let me know when she's available, then hasn't said a word to me all week afterwards. Which works for me because I didn't really want her to see the baby anyway, we just wanted to give her a chance. This morning I get a voicemail from her asking to go on a resort trip for the weekend. I'm absolutely baffled by this. What's going on in her mind? I don't even know what to say. 1, there's still a pandemic and we're quarantining with the baby. 2, I literally just gave birth a few days ago. 3, we haven't spoken in months and all of a sudden she wants me to go on vacation with her. 4, she's not allowed to see the baby. Even if she just wanted me to go, I'm not leaving my newborn. 5, I'm not going to take the baby away from her father for that long just so my mum can hang out with her. We're set to move as soon as I'm cleared by my midwife. I'm not responding to my mother and I'm starting to think that she's either seriously trying to manipulate me or just isn't right in the head. Probably a mix of both. I gave her a chance to see the baby on my terms and she didn't take it, so that's her loss. Update number 2. I gave my mum one chance to see her only grandchild and she turned it down because it wasn't a good enough offer. A few days ago, I finally get a response from her regarding the one viewing we were going to allow for her, and I just had to post about it. Due to the virus, our pediatrician, as we said, recommended that we quarantine the newborn for 2 months. My mum knew this, I told her about it many times. Mum refused to stay home, to get tested, to wear masks, or do anything really. It's her way or the highway in her mind, but not in reality. And boy did she get a wake-up call today. As of recently, I gave her the opportunity to view the baby through a car window. She seemed fine with it and said she'd let me know when she was available. She was abiding by my boundaries? Quite shocking, I know. Then 2 weeks passed and I heard nothing from her. Until this morning, she asked me when she can see her baby and that it's been almost 3 weeks and she hasn't held her. I laugh. I knew this was going to happen. I told her the baby is in quarantine and no one but me and Dad can touch her. That she can see her through a car window or not at all. She responds, I think I'll pass on the window, let me know when I can hold my baby. And I laugh again. This woman won't stop. I'm fed up. My pregnancy hormones are gone, my baby is here, we're moving away in a matter of weeks and she'll never find us. If she thinks she has any power here, she's dead wrong. So I send one last message to her and say, okay, no window then, maybe when she's 18 she'll reach out to you. And blocked. Update number 3. I vaccinated my child and my mother is not happy about it. I currently don't speak to my mother, nor have I for many months now. But somehow she still finds ways to butt into my life and the decisions I make for my child. My husband and I both come from anti-vax families. His side is against it but doesn't shame us for vaccinating our daughter. My mother, however, really has a lot to say about it. Since we both were raised not to believe in science, it's pretty natural for us to be against vaccinating our daughter when she was born. I had a home birth, so it was easy to avoid everything. We'd lie to pediatricians about it and just do what our parents did when we were kids. But since the new vaccine for COVID was released, I started to consider getting it and decided to do some actual research on vaccines as a whole. My husband and I made the decision to get vaccinated, as well as getting a schedule started for our 6-month-old baby to catch her up. We went in this morning to get her first shots. Everything went smoothly and so far she seems fine. She's been fussy and sleepier than usual, but the pediatrician said that's normal and will go away in a day or 2. We left feeling proud that we were able to educate ourselves effectively and set our baby up for success. Then I get a call. Oh, it's my grandpa. Or so I thought. I answer, and the first thing I hear is, "When you wake up and she isn't breathing, you'll be sorry. I can't believe you did this to my little girl." I hang up immediately and start to panic. I eventually traced it back to a family member that's a doctor. I was asking her questions about vaccines, and I told her we were going in today. I guess she told my grandpa how excited she was for us, and then he told my mum, and then boom, end of the world. My mother-in-law found out and seemed supportive, given her opinions about vaccines. She's told us, "It's your decision, and I trust that whatever you do is best for her." So I'm glad we have her to help reassure us a bit. But we've been getting texts and calls from my mum, through my grandpa's phone, absolutely freaking out, saying that she hopes something happens to the baby so I'll see the consequences of my actions. Also that she's praying for her, whatever that means. Ultimately, we're confident with our decisions and will continue with our schedule. Although, at times, we do question if we made the right decision. I'm sure everything will be fine, but my mother seriously needs to chill out. I know that this is just a drop in a very large bucket, but I can't get over that one comment near the end. The mother hoping something happens to the author's daughter so that she can have the satisfaction of being right. That tells you everything you'd ever need to know. Block that awful woman out of your life like you're already doing and don't let up. I'm glad we got such extensive updates of your situation so that we know that right now you're about as far away and safe from her as you can be, even if she's found a way to electronically communicate. I know that this woman seems nuts enough to eventually fly over and surprise you on your doorstep, but at that point you can surely have rights to refuse entry and then get her done for trespassing, because I can't see any other way to deal with her at this point. Ex-girlfriend accuses me of R-wording her after she got caught cheating. So I nuke her entire life. In late May of 2016, I asked my crush, Kate, of about 3 years out on a coffee date. 3 dates later, we made things official. For the next 7 months, our relationship felt too good to be true. We clicked on so many interests, so we hardly ever disagreed on anything. We were very open with each other, which led to an incredible life in the bedroom. We both had good jobs, so we had money to spoil one another, and our families were both enthusiastic about our relationship. In January of 2017, I was accepted into my country's Armed Forces Reserve Program as a combat engineer. I underwent basic training from February to late April, which was up until then the hardest thing I'd ever done. There were several times I thought I wouldn't graduate, and the only thing that kept me going was Kate's words of encouragement over texts and calls. She was there when I received my BTC certificate, and never let me forget how proud she was of me. As part of my job in the reserves, I'd have to go away in the summer for advanced training, between early June to late August. Kate fully supported me going 400 kilometers away to the training center and spending almost all of our summer break on work to further my military career. The summer was brutal on me. I was a social outcast from every clique that formed on our course, and was made the butt of several jokes. My self-esteem plummeted through the floor, but Kate's belief in me was what made me prevail. I passed as 5th best on the course, and I owed it all to her. Then came the decline. Things between us started to sour after returning home. According to her, I wasn't as spontaneous and outgoing as before I went away. I was dismissive, took small jabs and jokes as personal insults, and I'd rather stay in, watch movies, and do the deed instead of going out. Unbeknownst to both of us, I'd developed some nasty social anxiety due to the events of the summer, and it started affecting our relationship. Nearing our 2-year anniversary in 2018, we got into a heated argument over a small misunderstanding, and subsequently broke up. I was incredibly distraught before she texted me 3 days later and said she wanted to try and fix things. I didn't see her for 3 weeks, but we kept in touch every day, slowly mending things. When we officially got back together, nothing felt the same. Every time I talked to her, it was as if I was walking on eggshells, and it only worsened my anxiety, which in turn hurt our already damaged relationship. Then things finally came to a head at the end of July. You see, while in school, Kate had met a dude named John. She saw in John what she used to see in me, and they quickly became very close friends. He consoled her throughout our breakup and every little time I messed up afterwards. For the record, I knew of John, but never thought Kate would do anything with him. One night after work, we'd planned for me to stay the night at Kate's place. I arrived to see the two of them chilling on the living room couch. Kate said that John had dropped by for a spontaneous visit and he was just leaving. After John left, she became cold and distant. I slowly accepted our relationship was dead and asked her how things were between us. She echoed my thoughts and we agreed to break up the next day. She said I could stay the night one last time, seeing how it was late and she was still worrying about me. From then on until she fell asleep, Kate became uncharacteristically glued to and protective of her phone. In the past, she wouldn't care if I'd glanced over to catch her and her friends texting about whatever, but now she did her best to hide questions from me. I asked her about it and she said it was private stuff, which only raised more questions. After she fell asleep, curiosity got the better of me. I unlocked her phone, I knew her passcode, and found hundreds of messages between her and John. Messages about how she was now single, how exciting it was that they could now be a couple in public, and laughing at me about every little thing I did. I quietly sobbed as I read through each hurtful text. My crying wasn't as quiet as I thought. Kate stirred, and once she realized what I was doing, she threw a fit. I couldn't find the anger or words to combat her, so I just grabbed my stuff and left, with Kate shouting and yelling at me the whole time. It was late in the morning when I got home. I just broke down and ugly cried all night. I called in sick for work the next day and spent it sulking in my bed. The day after, I got several angry texts from Kate's friends and family. In a bid to save her image and denounce anything I might say about her, she told anyone she knew that I'd forced myself upon her that night in one last attempt to get some before we broke up, and that I'd left after the deed was done. Though what I did was scarring, she refused to press charges because she didn't want to make a circus of her life in court, and was the bigger person by doing so. I spent the next few months in fear that her allegation would have me discharged from the army and my image forever tarnished, but nothing happened. Here's where the revenge came in. 5 months afterwards, Kate DM'd me. After pleasantries, she basically apologized for the whole thing and admitted to actually faking it, though she'd never publicly admit it to save her reputation. My image be damned, I guess. This angered me, but I kept cool. I screenshot the texts and kept talking with her. Over the next 3 months, she entered a cycle of events as follows. Complaining about a current life situation, usually about John screwing up their relationship in one way or the other, and asking for advice. Lamenting our relationship, how I never screwed up like John did, and how she wished we could go back to the way things were. Then ignoring me because John finally pulled his head out of his butt, did some huge romantic gesture and saved their relationship. Then going on a smear campaign on social media about our relationship, employing her friends for help, knowing in full that I would see it all and trying to bait me into an argument. This would all work, she'd try to turn the argument around and paint me as the bad guy, and then she'd block me for about a month before starting the cycle all over again. This happened 3 times in exactly this order, and it always left me burnt out and broken, but a part of me wanted it to happen. Each time it did, I took screenshots of every damning thing she said. I had a full SD card of everything I'd compiled before I finally decided it was time. Making several picture copies of the worst text messages I caught, I bought several manila envelopes and mailed them to everyone I thought would matter to Kate. Her parents, grandparents, extended family she was super close with, best friends, work boss, co-workers, teachers, whoever I could find a mailing address for. I made sure that anyone getting the envelope would know that the texts were between me and Kate and sent them off. Within 3 weeks, I got results. Some of the people who messaged me to shame and insult me before now apologized for their words. My favorite was from her own parents, who went on to say that they were deeply sorry about their daughter's behavior, how they'd raised her to be better than how she acted, and to please not pursue any legal actions. The thought had crossed my mind, but I didn't have the money or the mental fortitude to fight a legal battle. I told them I'd think about it and that they'd be the first to know besides Kate if I did. Kate sent me some texts as well with things like, "How could you betray my trust like that?" or "You ruined my life, you absolute jerk." And I didn't reply. I just read every angry text that flew in with a satisfied grin and then blocked her when they stopped. I never fully found out how badly her life was affected by my revenge, but I do know that she dropped out of school and no longer has a job. I hope John was worth it. In short, girlfriend cheated on me and falsely accused me of the R word to cover it up. I endured her crap for a year, gathered evidence against her via text messages, and socially nuked her life. Thank you to everyone who's written in with kind words of support. A lot of people have been worrying about my mental state, so I thought I'd relieve those worries. I've been seeing a therapist for 3 months now and have made significant progress. I can't begin to explain how much I owe my therapist for helping me regain some semblance of normalcy in my life. Yeah, well, I'm glad you didn't take things further than just revealing the truth, to be honest, and it's probably better for your own health that you moved on instead of being dragged into months or years in a courtroom battle where both of you spend all of your money and one or both of you get destroyed financially. I'm sorry that what seemed like an ideal partner for you turned into, well, that. I've never worked out why so many couples that survive long-distance relationships so well often end up breaking up so soon after the other party returns. That alone would have been a sad but fair ending to this. The ex just had to go full cheating and lying afterwards to try and destroy our author. It sounds like you both picked up some psychological wear and tear over the years. Hopefully, you both recover in your mental health and go on to be good people again. You seem to be well on your way, and maybe one day she'll come to regret what she did. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Where did you learn to speak English? England. This story took place 5 months ago, so it won't exactly be word for word, but I've remembered enough of the event to recite it. So my mum is British, Welsh to be exact. For those who don't know, Wales is the little hump west of England and north of Cornwall. It's a beautiful place known for sheep, alcohol, and mistakes involving sheep and alcohol. My stepmum is ethnically Welsh but raised in England. Despite this, my Nain and Tade, Welsh for grandma and grandpa, insisted on her and her brother learning Welsh to preserve their heritage. The Welsh are a proud people, and so they wanted to ensure their children were as immersed as they could be. So she grew up bilingual, went to uni, got a job working for a certain tech giant, and moved to the US to help train their staff. A few years later, she met my dad and joined the family. At the time, I was still getting over my mum, so her presence was less than welcome. Despite this, my stepmom never pushed me or tried to buy her way in. She gave me the room I needed to grieve, and when I was ready, showered me with enough affection to make up for the lost time. She has my eternal love and respect for it, and has become my second mother. Now, we live in a large town in the Midwest, being west of the seaboard but east of the Mississippi. So while most people are open to outsiders, there's the usual few who just want to ruin everything. Around Christmas time, I was visiting home from college with my girlfriend, Charlie, enjoying some quality girls' time with my stepmom. We were in the mall searching for some place that sold plastic modeling glue for my dad, who's really into Warhammer. During this, my stepmom is on the phone with her brother, who still lives in the UK, catching up and sharing some laughs. They were speaking Welsh to each other, which happened to offend a woman who has since earned the title of Karen. We were standing in front of the mall map trying to find the hobby store, when I heard a loud scoff from behind us. I turned to see a woman dressed in a rather nice-looking business suit corralling her kids away like they'd just encountered a streaker. Now, I was ready to let it go, but Charlie can get very defensive of people she likes, so she ended up calling this lady out. "Something offend you, ma'am?" She seemed to ponder her next move before responding with that oh-so-stupid phrase, "You're in America. When you're here, you speak English, not Muslim. My kids don't need to hear that." Now, I've met some pretty stupid people in my life. I've even dated one. But never, ever have I heard of someone confusing Welsh for Arabic, which is what I assumed she meant. They're two very different languages from two very different cultures. The only similarities between them is how little I understand them. However, for someone to be so offended by someone speaking another language, they probably also didn't immerse themselves too much in other cultures. To her, the world probably began in New York and ended in LA. It was at this point that my stepmom hung up. "Now, I know that Americans get a bad rap and all," she said in an obvious British accent, "but it doesn't help when you actively conform to the stereotype." "Oh my God," Karen said with righteous indignation. "Your accent is awful. Where did you even learn to speak English?" My mum held the most deadpan expression she could. England. I swear that I could smell the smoke coming from the flaming mess inside Karen's skull. She looked at Charlie and I, a pair of shockingly Caucasian college brats, and then my stepmom, our even paler chaperone, took a moment to process what she was doing and then walked away, dragging a group of embarrassed-looking tweens with her. I have to give her credit, at least she knew when to quit. My stepmom chuckled, muttered an offensive-sounding Welsh phrase, and then helped us scan the map for the hobby shop. The rest of the day went well, and we had a funny story to tell my dad when we got back. To all my bigots out there who get offended when someone speaks another language, get over yourselves. The world doesn't revolve around you. To all my bilingual friends out there who speak their native tongues, good for you. It's important to keep your culture alive. And to Karen, the next time you try to accost someone for speaking something other than English, at least get the right consonant. So, she's the jerk, right? Yes, she absolutely is. Also, I hope your stepmom delivered her statement in the same BBC Queen's English that I acted it out in, because I can't imagine anything more shocking to a racist than accosting someone for not speaking the lingo only to hear that. In most other cases, at least. Sadly, it doesn't sound like Karen was aware that British English isn't an accent that comes out of the Middle East. You have to wonder if the business suit is for her job or just for show, because I honestly can't think of how someone this ignorant would get a high-power business job. Your mum sounds like an absolute gem, and honestly good on her for keeping her heritage alive and proud in her life. Welsh is an absolutely beautiful language to listen to. Just ask Tolkien, who based the Elvish language and Lord of the Rings off it. The more of that we can have around in our immediate vicinity, the better. Don't fire the guy who holds the patents. This is not my story. I was present for it, sure, but I didn't see all of it personally. Rather, this is my father's story. For some context, my father had a degree in mechanical engineering, either a master's or doctorate. It had taken him years to get, and he was very proud of that. Thanks to his training, he had found his way working for many well-known companies, working primarily with the procedures used to make various things. Over time, he had privately began working on an idea that would revolutionize how school and gym lockers worked. See, my father realized that there was a problem with those kinds of metal lockers. Namely, it was very easy for a person to break into them. What's more, as the lockers were designed, there were multiple moving exposed parts, which meant that if a student put too many books in one, or really anything got against the door, the locker could be jammed shut, making it near on impossible to open. So for several years, Dad toyed with a number of ideas before hitting on a new design which would solve all those problems. The inner workings of the locker's locking mechanism would be contained within the door in such a way that 1. It was impossible for someone to shim or break into, and 2. The entire mechanism would be enclosed, and 3. It was relatively maintenance-free. Now, at this point, my father was the vice president of manufacturing, and apparently there wasn't a clause in his contract that said if he designed anything while working for the company, then he had to turn it over to them for profit. Dad still approached the company, offering them the design, but they weren't interested. Dad sat on the design for a while before eventually just taking out several patents on them and then forgetting about them. About 6 months after his first attempt at getting the company interested, the parent company's owner and chairman of the board passed away, and the board opted to sell off some of the holdings. The company my dad worked for was part of that. The new owners were young guys who seemed to think they knew everything, as young business owners always seem to think, and they set about changing 99% of the way things were being done. At some point, they stumbled across the plans my father had designed. Now, that's where things turned curious. They really wanted to start producing this new design, but as they didn't have all the plans and processes laid out for them, they had to turn to my father for answers. Rather than asking him how to do it or licensing the patents, as any reputable company would have done, they ordered him to turn over all his work or they'd fire him. Dad stood his ground and refused. The new owners and my father went back and forth, arguing over details for several weeks, before finally the new owners fired my father for insubordination. So, on to the revenge. After cleaning out his office and packing things in the trunk of his car, my father headed home and made a few phone calls. He must have gone through 8 or 9 different calls before he got in touch with someone who was interested in what he had to say. See, my dad was under no illusions that the company that had fired him wasn't just going to make those patented lockers on their own. He also knew that though the company itself was relatively small, the owners had money and there was no way he could fight them. However, a larger company could. So he contacted the major competitors and made them an offer. He eventually set up a meeting with some people, wheeled out a prototype he had made, explained how everything worked, and noted that with this system, the company could revolutionize the way lockers were designed, and improve both safety and security. What's more, as he was the only patent holder, for the next 7 or so years, That company could be the only company to produce them. The competitor jumped at the chance and bought all of the patents, both for the design and the process. They even paid my dad a substantial consultancy fee to go out to their manufacturing site and teach their crews how to make the needed tool and die sets to produce them. Less than 6 months after the first company had fired him, their number one competitor was completely destroying them in the market with this new design, and there wasn't a darn thing the first company could do about it. They did try suing my father, claiming he had stolen their intellectual property, but that case quickly evaporated when they had to admit under oath that they'd never actually signed a contract with him, and there was no requirement that he turn over anything he created for the company. In the 7 years from when the second company bought the locker design and process patents, they'd pretty handily moved into the markets that previously they'd been unable to. The first company soldiered on, but by the time the patent had finally expired, they were a shadow of their former selves. The new owners had sold the company at a loss, with the competitor buying it, only to shut that production facility down due to redundancy. It put maybe 200 people out of work, though given how they'd lost so much business, I wager it was far less than that. So yeah, the new guys didn't want to play ball, they threatened the guy that holds the patents on something they want to do, then fired him only to have him take everything to their competitor and effectively put them out of business. Sadly, any money that Dad earned off his little endeavor was lost after an incident that left him disabled. Medical bills being what they are, by the end of it we were pretty much broke. Well, I don't know if this one feels as satisfying, given that our poor old Pops didn't exactly get to enjoy his success long into retirement, and I don't know that his old bosses were the sorts of vindictive jerks that we so often see on the channel. They definitely weren't in the right, though. When a good, loyal employee has a patent that you don't have a claim to, and you'd like to utilize said patent, pay them, goddammit! Otherwise, you're just ruining everything for everyone. You don't get to use this game-changing invention, and they're out of a job. Who wins in that situation? And he took everything further and apparently left them dead in the water for all their trouble in the end. So there you go, former bosses. Don't throw tantrums, pay your employees for their intellectual property. End of story. It's not that hard. It really sucks about the dad not being able to enjoy it all at the end. These stories don't always have fairy tale endings, I guess. My invention was stolen, but the thieves forgot that I owned the copyright and had to pay me $35,000. A couple of years ago, when I was 18, I got my degree in game development. It's a 4-year track with the last year being 4 months internship and 4 months to work on a test of skill. This is a project that you can think up yourself to prove that you're capable in game development. I just had my internship at a very small game studio, which was just 2 women. Let's call them B and C. You might later want to amend this to B word and C word. They both specialized in 3D model making and 2D art. Textures, graphics, that kind of stuff. Neither of them was a programmer, so they got interns to program stuff for them. I was kind of disappointed as I had no experienced programmer to learn from or to guide me, but this was my only option since I started looking for an internship too late. B and C were kind of nasty and condescending in their language use. I didn't stand up for myself much. I was always just kind of a fat nerd and had no self-confidence coming out of high school or college. What was cool was that they were located in an incubator, which is like a large office building that rents desks for like €50 a month instead of floors. Great for startups and single-person companies. As a cherry on top, it was also an incubator that specialized in game companies. So, lots of contacts and opportunities to meet people in the industry. I had fun there, at first. They'd already started on a project, and I asked them what system they wanted me to make. Like inventory, menus, or gameplay elements. They had an idea of what they wanted. It was a game for kids that used augmented reality. AR is quite difficult to make. And they didn't want to use APIs from companies that had already made the AR system, because that would cost too much money. So for 3 out of the 4 months I was there, I built my own AR system. It was really tough and I had no help, other than from Stack Overflow. Love them. Because the other devs in the incubator had their own stuff to work on. The best way to learn programming is to be good with Google and just jump in the deep end and figure it all out. So I finished the AR system that worked with 2D image recognition. Perfect for what they wanted. But it turned out they didn't have a game design document, which is a plan of the sorts of stuff you want in your game. They also didn't have a to-do wall or anything. So I spent my last month making inventory systems and stuff that always ended up not being the way they wanted after all. They just said we need an inventory system, but didn't know what it all had to do. So basically, my time was wasted there. Skip forward 5 months. I got my degree and decided I wanted to check out the industry some more. I got all of my savings out and decided I could spend a year making games and maybe it would lead to something. So I rented a desk at the incubator and thought about what game I was going to make. B and C believed that if you're technical, you're not creative. They saw programmers like tools used to achieve their vision. 2 things annoying about that. The first is, just because I like programming doesn't mean I'm incapable of imagining worlds and stories. 2. Game devs and game designers need each other. 2 disciplines of equal importance that make a game work. So this is what happened when they approached me. B said, "Hey Sam, are you busy?" I replied, "I'm just thinking about what kind of game I want to make." She then goes, "Hey C, come over, he's not busy." C comes over. "Hi Sam, could you help us out with something?" Yeah, sure, what can I do for you?" "We need you to make a menu for Unity, which is the game engine we were working in, for the AR system that you made." Now I'll admit, the AR system was not the easiest to work with. It had a lot of settings and a series of steps needed to make it work with an image. And they wanted me to simplify it, even though I'd made an extensive manual on how to make it work. But I'd learned so much in those 8 months and was positive I could improve the system a lot. Which was good because the current code belonged to them. But I could use the same architecture of code and rework it to make it mine. So I say, yeah, alright, I guess I can rework the system and make it more user-friendly. "Nice. Let us know when you're finished." I spent about a month making my AR system better and the finished system only 10% code with the old system. That was when I told them it was finished and showed it off. I said, "This 2.0 version had better tracking in all light conditions, it can cover more angles, needs less detail, and now has a very user-friendly UI along with tooltips." What I also did is change the standard script Unity gives you when you make a new script. I put my name and copyright in the code so I could prove it was all mine. B and C were very happy with it and even asked me to join their project as a partner. I said, "Yeah, I'd love to join. I'll even give you a discount on the AR system." C said with kind of a smug face, Yeah, we won't be paying you. The code was already ours and you just improved it. Besides, we didn't sign a contract or anything. Just be happy with the opportunity we just gave you. And if you didn't intern with us, you wouldn't be here to begin with." "Are you serious? I spent a month working on this." "Yeah, but you'll make plenty with the project," said B. There was nothing I could do about it, so I just sucked it up and agreed to join the project. Maybe I agreed more out of FOMO rather than excitement to work with them. I did learn a lesson though. Always have a contract. And boy did I draw something up. For the contract, I had a right to 25% of the finished product's income, basic stuff. But because I didn't trust B&C and was determined not to be burned again, I drew up a general conditions contract, which was basically the policy and restrictions of working with my one-man studio. It has all the basic rights and stuff, but it also had 2 clauses that make me laugh to this day. The first, any and all code developed by me belonged to me in perpetuity, and may not be copied, modified, or used in any way without my express permission, and under no condition can I be forced to release the code files. Fine on breach of contract was €1,000 per script file. The AR system had more than 20 scripts in it, by the way. The second clause was when I got fired from a shared product, I was entitled to €50 for every hour I spent working on the project. No exceptions. They signed both contracts without even reading them, and didn't have contracts for me in return. The first contract was what bound me to the project. And here comes the good part. I learned pretty early on that I was just there to listen and make whatever they wanted. They didn't want my input on anything. Even if they had dumb, impractical, or just impossible ideas about what the game should have, I couldn't protest or suggest something else, even though I tried. So fast forward 6 months, it's winter now and the project is just not going very well. I constantly have to revisit finished components because they wanted more functionality in them. I wasn't happy and went over to their desks to complain and demand a final document I could work off. They said, "It's called feature creep and a real game developer should know how to deal with that. It's not alright, I'm wasting my time because you two can't make up your minds and get a final idea in your heads." B and C dismissed me and later sent me an email. Dearest partner, we regret to inform you that our partnership is not working out, and we've decided to let you go from the project. We hope there aren't any hard feelings. I was quite angry, but I remembered the clauses, so at least I'd get paid a lot of money. I went over to their desks with the meanest grin on my face. Hey guys, I read your email. That sucks, but I understand. We have creative ideas and we're just not on the same page. We're so happy you understand. Are you sure there are no hard feelings? No, not at all. I learned a lot and had fun. I can recycle the components to make other games. Just remember you can't do anything similar to our game. They referred to the competition clause in my internship contract, which apparently I was still under because that project wasn't finished. Oh yeah, no worries, I got something else in mind. After which I returned to my desk and sent them an invoice of 26 weeks, 40 hours a week for $50 an hour on the project, with my log to back it up. Total cost, 52,000 euros, which is around 60,000 US dollars at the time of writing. They freaked out. They had nowhere near this kind of money as they were both working second jobs and were saving up wanting to start a family with their boyfriends. C says, "There's no way we're paying this much. We understand some compensation is warranted, but this is too much." I said, "I lost 6 months of income on this project and you signed on these terms." I had a copy of the general conditions and pointed the clause out at them. But fine, I'll take it to court and we'll see what the judge has to say. The court proceedings took around 8 months. I decided in the meantime that owning a one-man game studio was really hard and decided to go to university and get a degree in IT and do game dev on the side. But that's another story. The judge had decided I was in the right thanks to my logs and copyright lines in the code, but also asking for too much as it would utterly bankrupt B and C. So I'd get 20,000 euro and be reimbursed for legal costs, totaling about 35,000 euro. For B and C, it was a massive blow. B had to sell her car to get the money and couldn't get a mortgage for the house she wanted to buy. They also had to use home offices as the others working at the incubator wouldn't even talk with them anymore, since I made sure everyone there knew what happened and how they tried to screw me over. I also told the entire story to my old teachers and no interns will be coming to them from my old college. The last time I heard from them was a year or so later asking me for the code I made for the project. A hard drive had crapped out and they didn't have backups, and this shows their level of professionalism. I laughed my butt off over the phone and pointed them to the number 1 clause of the general conditions. You can't claim the code, it's in the general conditions. You can't even work with anything I made because you don't have my permission to use my code. And if you did, you'd owe me another 20,000 euros. Tell you what though, I'll sell it to you. How much do you want? 52,000 euros. A silence on the other end of the phone. Click. As of now, their studio is out of business and I am to graduate next year with no study debt at all. I've lost weight and have a lot more self-confidence. This story makes me feel powerful and good about myself. I stood up and it got rewarded. Don't mess with the fat programming nerd. In short, my project partners tried to get me to do work for free and then kicked me out. I sued them and got 35k. They're out of business now. Wow. I'm trying to think from some perspective where these people don't come off as the jerks, and I honestly can't think how you pull some of the crap that B and C tried to pull and think that you're the good guy in this negotiation. Don't try to rip off your employees and workers, people. Also, I, a person that only knows a bit about business, understand that feature creep isn't something you strive for or just an excuse for messing up people's time. It's kind of an inevitability, but also, it sounds like every decision made at this place was spur of the moment, and nobody attempted to try and just talk through a design goal from the beginning. Although having your business shut down is no doubt a really rough deal and completely destructive for their lives, I'm just glad that they're several steps back from being able to trick future trusting devs and programmers into being able to work on the code that they no longer have access to, and that they won't be sent any more interns by the author's college, at least. And a lesson we've learned many times on this channel: write contracts, people. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Boss did not like the look of the bulk mailing stamp and told me to remove it. Cost the company over 220k. Back in the 1980s, I worked for a sporting goods company as a catalog designer. Small company, privately owned. I was the entire advertising department by myself. I created 4 catalogs a year. These were responsible for most of our mail order sales, pre-internet, to the tune of around $700,000 a year. We sent the catalogs via bulk mail using a mailing service. This let us send them for a much discounted rate. To do this required the use of a bulk mail permit and placing the permit info on the mailing area of the catalog. Technically, it's called a fiche. Enter my new boss. Call him Ron. I was number 1, the only one in my department. For some reason, the company hired Ron as a favor to a friend. From day 1, he was micromanaging, questioning everything, and screwing up my very tight schedule. This was before computers were common. Everything was by hand. Literally typing out copy and reducing it on a photocopier to fit. Developing the photo film myself, making prints, etc. The actual printer had to add screens to the photos so they'd print, burn metal plates, and so on. All time-consuming and expensive. Deadlines couldn't be missed. So I was stuck with several 16-hour days come crunch time. I was complaining to the owner, but he really couldn't care less. I really wanted to stick it to Ron, and the opportunity presented itself. Constant threats of, my way or you're fired, were getting to me. The latest pre-summer catalog was done, because summer was our big season. I had to give him my mock-up, photocopied sheets stapled together, of the final catalog for his approval. A new step added after he demanded it. He looked at it and sent it back with several pointless revisions, and a note to remove that ugly permit box, because apparently it wasn't needed. Where he worked previously, they stuffed their mailers in envelopes. The envelopes had the fiche, but their mailer did this last step. I simply asked him to initial the changes, as this was the final approved version and was going to the printer the next day. There was no time to check it again. So he did. I knew it would be a total mess, and it's something I would never have done in the past. 50,000 catalogs printed and shipped directly to the mailer. The day they arrive at the mailer, the boss gets a call from the sales rep. We can't mail your catalogs. My boss storms into my area of the building and is literally screaming. Ron is now angry and yelling at me, joined by the boss. I swear, spittle and froth, vein bulging, screaming. Minimum 2-week delay, wasted money, lost sales. I explained what happened, the threat to fire me, and showed the owner the changes to the final copy. Initialed by Ron. He was going to give Ron a second chance until the bill came in from the printer. They had to stamp 50,000 catalogs by hand. We had to rent their permit since that's what was on their stamp. Rental and labor were almost 8,000. Adjusted for inflation, that's 20K. Plus our early summer sales boost was off by almost 50K from previous years, or 200K adjusted for inflation. Ron was fired. I was left alone after that. Could I have done this another way? Am I the jerk? The many stories of bad bosses we get on this channel, coupled with the movie Office Space, have done a pretty good job in convincing the narrator that at least 60% of all middle managers are just redundant idiots who actively detract from the day-to-day work of any given workplace. It kinda sounds like Ron was a jerk in that desperate position of needing to look like he was doing something, anything, to justify his position, in a workplace that was probably already working about as optimally as one could hope. Also, can you imagine removing a branded stamp, or a stamp that is clearly there for a reason, and not imagining that said mark is there for a particular purpose or obligation? It's akin to taking the 20th Century Fox logo off the beginning of your film because you don't like them, and not expecting the inevitable multi-million-dollar lawsuit. I will say that the story is a bit of a cowboy move. I don't see how you risk losing the company that much money just to get back at someone you hate. What if the place went under? What a maverick you are, author. Also, another example of why you get signatures on everything you can. I have to pay for that 10 cents personal call charge? Done. Back in the days before unlimited mobile phone calling plans and long distance, I had a company-paid flip phone. There were all kinds of fussy rules attached to using it. No texting, even though texting was free. No long-distance calls, with one exception, as I'll explain soon. No special ringtones, and no using the camera. Like I said, fussy rules. The one exception to the no long-distance calls rule was for travel. In my job, I rarely would have to travel to a different calling area, like roaming. But if I did, I was permitted one long-distance call per day to call home. That's it. So, the day came when I had to travel and stay overnight in a hotel for work. When I arrived at the hotel, I called my wife to let her know I'd arrived and spent a couple of minutes talking to my kids. Got some supper, did some work in front of the TV in the hotel room, and went to bed. The next day, while at the conference I was attending, I got a call from my home office. As I was in a large hotel, the call dropped, so I had to call back. Didn't think anything of it, went back to my session and enjoyed the speaker. Later, after I got back to the hotel, I called home to say goodnight to the kids. I got the answering machine and left a message. Didn't think anything of that either. The next day I returned and went on with my life. At the end of the month, I got a call from finance. "Peter, it's the finance supervisor. I'm just reviewing your latest cell phone bill and it shows an unauthorized long-distance call." "Really? What's the date?" "April 3rd. You made a call to the office number at 9:20 and then another one to my home number at 6:15. "Oh yeah, that's when I was at the conference. The first call was to me from the office, but I got cut off and had to call back. I called home from the hotel later." "So, how would you like to reimburse us for the call?" "I beg your pardon?" "The second call. You have to reimburse for the unauthorized long-distance call. You have an expense claim from the conference, so I can deduct it from that, or you can pay directly." "How much are we talking about?" 10 cents. 10 cents? 10 cents? Would you like that deducted from your expense claim?" I thought I was being punked. Seriously. I sat in stunned silence for a few moments. "No. You know what? I'll pay you directly," I said and wished the supervisor a pleasant day. I opened my drawer where I had some spare change. I took 2 nickels, taped them to a sheet of 8.5 by 11-inch paper, and wrote, "For cell phone charge," and my name. I then took a company envelope, addressed it to the finance office in a different building, walking distance away, folded a sheet of paper, and put it in the envelope. I put the envelope in the outgoing mail tray, the postage for which would be paid for by the company. A few days later, I got a call from the comptroller herself. 3 pay grades above me, and usually wouldn't interact with someone on my level. Apparently, the supervisor had complained about me. She said, "What's with the nickels?" I explained the situation, told her the supervisor had insisted that I pay the 10-cent charge and that I'd complied. She laughed out loud. The paper, envelope, and postage had cost the company more than what they recovered. The following month, the finance department updated the cell phone policy. From then on, only long-distance charges in excess of $10 had to be reimbursed. What a day for incompetent office workers who don't have enough to do in their lives. First Ron, and now whichever person in finance thought that 10 cents was worth a phone call and a bunch of admin. Look, maybe the supervisor who kicked all of this off really did genuinely care enough about their job to kick up a mega fuss about the missing 10 cents. My money is on them trying to look busy, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt anyway. Even if they do care this much, what did they plan on doing if you didn't pay? Going to the higher-ups and whining and griping that an employee had cost the company a whole 10 cents more than allowed? Actually, I wouldn't put it past them, given that they're clearly more than okay with lodging complaints about this sort of thing to the fricking comptroller. Still, a very positive outcome. No longer will employees live in fear of these charges, and everyone can call home a lot more. Super nice improvement when all is said and done. Karen tells me, her delivery driver, to pay for food because her son is autistic. So I'm a delivery driver for a major food delivery company in a major college town in Texas where everyone loves maroon. Normally, the job isn't bad, it pays pretty well and customers are generally fine, though you'll always have idiots in every service job. This, however, surpassed anything I'd ever experienced before. I got an order alert on my phone. Relatively simple, but expensive order. We drivers love expensive orders, by the way, and it was from a restaurant nearby. In the portion for delivery instructions, the customer explains that I need to call her once I arrive, as ringing the doorbell, like I normally would disturb her autistic son. Okay, no problem at all. I received therapy for sensory issues when I was a kid, so I'm going to be even more sympathetic to that than the average person. I receive the order, drive over to the house in a nice part of town, and give the customer a call. A younger woman answers and tells me to come up to the door. I do so, and here enters the entitled mother, who strangely was fairly attractive and did not have the typical Karen haircut. I say, "Here's your order, ma'am. Is there anything else I can help you with today?"
Yes, my son is autistic and people like you don't understand how difficult it is to raise him. I shouldn't have to pay this much for food. Can you give me a discount?
I'm sorry, ma'am, the app calculates your order total, not me. It's already been paid for. She did not like that answer. Her face changed from a smug smirk into a snarl. I suppose I didn't realize how ridiculous the idea that people pay for their own food is. She says,
Well, why don't you pay for it then? I'm not sure if you heard, but my son is autistic, and it's your fault that he's still hungry.
I'm sorry, Mom, but that goes against our policy. If I paid for your order, I'd probably be fired.
Good, you're a useless driver anyway. You're disgusting. My son is starving to death. Since I've had to go through so much trouble with you, you should tip me.
My app has a setting that while you're in the process of taking an order to a customer, they'll assign you another one at the same time if there's activity. Thankfully, this saved me. I just say, can't do that, Mom. Here's your order. And I placed the food gently on the ground between us and jogged back to my car. She was shouting something unintelligible, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. So much for not disturbing her autistic son. Unsurprisingly, she gave me a 1-star review. You tip online, so I got a small tip. I contacted support about it the next day. I said, yeah, I had a crazy lady yesterday, started demanding that I pay for her order and even that I tip her. Really rude, not sure what the deal was. And I knew what the deal was, that's why I'm here. The service lady says, which order was it? And I gave her the order number and the address.
Yikes, you're the third person to complain about her. 1 or 2, we take it with a grain of salt, but 3, you're probably out. I'll try to get her deactivated. If so, her review will be off your record.
Thanks, appreciate it. I feel like the entire world is better off now that she won't get deliveries from us anymore. But was the cost worth it? That remains to be seen. Am I the jerk? Not a jerk. This woman is either cheap or actually desperate enough to just try and pull this on a different service. And when they inevitably stop her from ordering there too, she's just going to move all of her crap to a local grocery shop until she's inevitably banned there as well. It honestly sounds a bit like something is fishy here. As the author has mentioned, she's fine with making a big noisy scene and clearly doesn't have that much of a grip on reality to begin with. If her son is on the spectrum, she's just kind of nuts for expecting that much of a deal on her food. And if the nagging thought at the back of my skull is correct and she's just fabricating or exaggerating things to get free stuff, she's also a garbage person. Look, I don't care how badly you're doing, the drivers in these services have really raw deals as it is. Don't go taking it off their small earnings. I hope you've moved on to better things, author. Am I the jerk for not correcting my son when he told off his stepfather, also my husband? I've been married to my husband, Jeremy, since my son, Chris, was 8. Chris is now 17. My husband and Chris have a fantastic relationship, despite what this story might imply. My birthday is in 2 weeks, and I honestly haven't put much thought into it. My husband is not a gift giver. He says he has a hard time figuring out what to get and doesn't want to waste money on something that people won't use. He's also a practical person, whereas I'm by far the sentimental type. So even when he does get me something, it's something that I can use every day. Which, no big deal, obviously, but I've requested some sentimental pieces and he just never gets them. So I pretty much gave up on ever asking for anything, and it did really bother me for a number of years, but now it truly doesn't bother me, usually. Well, my son graduated a year early and doesn't start college until next year. So he currently works 2 jobs by his own choice. I've asked him to cut back and enjoy his teen years before adulthood, but working just seems to make him happy. So he works at a mechanic shop and a junkyard. Most of his buddies work there too, so at least he's getting some time in with friends. Well, my husband hates spending money and tries inflicting that on us. He lives as frugally as possible and saves every single dime that he can. He could retire right this second and wouldn't be able to get through all the money he's saved. My son comes home last night with 3 of his buddies that work with him, and he's like, I know it's not for 2 more weeks, but I can't wait for you to open this, so please open it now. Him and his buddies are snickering about it, so I thought it would be some gag gift. But much to my surprise, it was a huge, absolutely gorgeous wall piece that has photo frames and shelves built in. My husband immediately went, wow, how much did that cost? That could have gone into an IRA ROS account. I don't know if I said that right. My son immediately shot cold daggers at my husband and says, It's truly none of your business what I do with my money, and since you outright refuse to buy my mother nice things that she absolutely deserves, I'll make sure she gets something nice. And for the record, we made this ourselves. It didn't cost us anything. My husband just stops talking, looking at me and waiting for me to say something. And when I don't, he shakes his head and walks off. After the boys leave, he says I allowed Chris to embarrass him in front of other people, and I should have said something. I simply told him that Chris was right. Am I the jerk? Kinda sounds like your husband is just embarrassed that his stepson showed him up for being such a miserly gift giver, who only seems to hoard gold like a dragon. The author goes to a great deal of trouble to say that they don't mind their husband's behavior, but it sure sounds like they have a lot of clear ideas of what they would like that their husband completely ignores. Oh well, this isn't the Rate Your Marriage channel, I suppose. If we're going to talk about rude and disrespectful behavior, stepdad has to check himself for asking how much a gift costs in front of the fricking recipient. Not cool. Also, the son is right, it's his money. Also kind of implying that Chris was an idiot for spending a bunch of time and effort on a really thoughtful gift that his mum clearly appreciated is not a great point in stepdad's favor. The author and Chris aren't jerks. The post isn't about whether stepdad is or not, but it kinda seems like he is. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. How a brat of a kid ended up causing a movie-style chase scene. Life is crazy. 3 days ago, I was in New York where I got a story about an entitled dad, his children, and the deli waitress who was an absolute legend. This part of my history will be important later. Now, we're in Santa Monica with an entire entitled parade going on. I landed in California 2 days ago, and one of the minor reasons I'm here is because Pokemon Go is very popular at the famous boardwalk. Let me tell you right now, this story would have ended differently had I not had my friends with me. So I'm traveling the US these next few weeks because I'm looking into colleges to go after my current one. I traveled here to California, landed, and met my best friend Frank and my other friend Paula, where we all agreed to share a room on the coast because it's expensive as frick. Yesterday I went to the University of California, got my info, and we left. That evening, the three of us decided to check out the boardwalk, and we were heavy Pokemon Go players. We decided we'd split up and see what we could catch, do some gyms, a few other things. 8 p.m. rolls around and we're all hanging out again near a food vendor with our new friends and gym battles. That's when I notice these other 3 kids across from us have their phones out and the boy looks angry. He starts storming over to me, so I nudge Frank for him to notice. This kid goes, "Frick you, I can't fight this. What's your deal anyway? You've got no life or something?" The 2 girls come walking over while Paula is now in on this. Frank says, "Hey, what the hell's your problem? You looking for a fight?" This strange boy shows us his phone, and it's the gym that we all captured together with our Pokemon in them. As a disclaimer, my Pokemon is at 3,500 CP, and Frank has one at almost 4,000, and Paula has hers at 3,000. The boys' presumed sisters chime in at this point. The first one says, "Give Big Bro his title back." "Yeah, he always treats us right when he wins." That was a legit phrase that she said, I kid you not. Paula says, "So what? We got a gym, now you've got to take it from us." "Yeah, seriously, what did you expect from this game?" The strange boy fumes, "Take them out so I can win. This is completely unfair." "I'm sorry, man, but that's part of the game." "What are you gonna do, man? Cry about it to your parents?" "Shut up, don't make me hurt you. I'll beat all of you up, you won't hit me, I dare you." Frank says, "Kid, if you try to hit me, I guarantee I will knock your butt on the ground." As if there was a hand from God giving him the boost, this kid takes a swing at Frank, and without hesitating, Frank moves over to the left to avoid being punched. So the kid hits the food stand behind him. Then, in one swift motion, Frank pops this kid in the face, knocking him down and onto the floor. One daughter runs over to her brother while the other one runs away, presumably to go and get their parents. Paula says to me, "I bet you $10 we're getting another story for the internet." I'll take those chances. And not even 10 seconds later we hear, "My poor baby!" Sure enough, here comes this obvious Karen with her daughter being yanked behind her as they storm through the crowd to find her beloved son on the floor with blood coming out of his nose. "How could you monsters do this? He's my sweet child and you made him ugly. What the frick do you have to say for yourselves?" Frick off. It's because that runt started it. That's what we have to say for ourselves. Frank was immediately rewarded with high fives from both me and Paula. Soon enough, this man in his late 30s helping an older man in his early 60s comes up to the scene and starts yelling at us too. Karen, what happened here? Oh my god, her actual fricking name is Karen. What are the odds?
According to our daughter, my baby was trying to talk to these boys, and they just attacked him.
Paula had her jaw drop, basically. Me and Frank had this look of, here we go again, and I already felt my wallet feel $10 heavier. The old man chimed in, I'm sure there's more to it than that. At which his son said, Dad, these people hurt your grandson. You're not upset? The dad was treating his son. The daughters were running around annoying other people who were watching. The entitled mother was up in our face like we did something wrong. The daughters were shouting, Mommy is mad, Daddy's mad. How about I call the police on you three boys and ruin your lives for attacking my child? Frank asks, how old is this kid? He looks like he's in his 20s. I say, probably still is. Still living with his parents, just means he didn't get into college.
Shut up, both of you. My husband works for the state police, and we will be happy to send you to the island prison.
Paula cut in, are you talking about Alcatraz? The prison that's closed?
You stupid kid, I hope you get screwed in the butt and some inmate bites your wang off.
Paula had her hair tied up behind her and she had a baseball cap on. Her clothes were fairly loose and you couldn't see her figure. We pieced together later why Karen couldn't tell this. Grandpa says, don't mind Karen, she's just flustered right now. Frank, listen to your elders, they know more than you. Hey sir, how old is this boy? Karen tries to take control back.
What does that have to do with anything? You hit my boy.
Not you, I meant your grandpa. He's 25. Karen treats him like a king, so he thinks he is one.
I do not. You just don't know the new style of parenting.
Giving him $500 when he asked to go to the movies during finals week and going to Disneyland every other weekend with your daughters is the new parenting? Not funny, Dad, says the entitled dad. The son by this point had gotten off the ground and was mad. He hopped up and charged straight at us. In a moment of dumb ideas, we took off and spread out immediately. I ran towards the nearby stairs and bolted through the sand. Frank and Paula also split up and ran elsewhere. I turned around and I guess because I picked the stairs that were literally in eyeshot, this son ran after me. I'm going to be honest here. I'm not going to make up a lie like I ran track so I dusted him, or I'm a pro wrestler so I fought him, or anything like that. I'm actually really out of shape. So it didn't take long for this son to catch up to me. But one thing about me is that I'm quick to move. I can duck and turn on a dime like you wouldn't believe. So every time the son got close to me, I'd duck to avoid a punch he might have thrown, and then start running a different way. At some point, he learned, so he started kicking. If I had to guess, this lasted about 5 minutes. Then my brain decided to run into a nearby parking lot. At this point, I'm winded, and so is the son, if I had to guess. There were still plenty of cars parked, so I ran behind a truck, ducked down, and rolled underneath. I could see him running around the truck and going straight past me without detecting me. As I'm waiting, I pull out my AirPods and call Frank. While I'm on the phone, I get out from the truck and start running back up the pier. Frank says, dude, where are you? Probably half a mile skinnier than what I was earlier. Where did you and Paula bounce to? I booked it to the underside of the pier. Paula ran to the changing room and just hid in there. Smart. I think I lost the entitled kid when I hid under a random truck I found. Are you serious? You hid under a truck? Sure, why not? Just meet us at the hotel. I think I've had enough of entitled jerks for one trip. And sure enough, we made it to the hotel without getting caught. The first thing we did was we used the group chat we have to tell our sides of the stories. Then we left to go and get food. And that's about it. No police as far as we can tell, but one hell of an exercise. Moral of the story, make sure you take on your friend's bet. You'll often win. Honestly, the fact that this kid is willing enough to throw hands in front of his mum and grandparent would suggest that they must have seen him initiate physical fights before. So what's with the mum and dad instinctively rushing to his aid and suspecting the others of starting the fight, when this definitely must have happened before now? Also, right up until you brought up the so-called kid's age, I was just assuming that he was in his early teens. Little did I realize my guess was only about halfway there. I don't know what's going on, or whether there were maybe some learning difficulties going on with the son, but the fact that no such things were mentioned by the parents, grandparents, and the implication that he was just kind of a 25-year-old man-child do make it a little easier to root against him. A 25-year-old man-child who hangs out on the California boardwalk and fights kids who beat his score on Pokemon Go. You know where to find him, singles. An entitled mother insists that I share my Nintendo Switch with her child on my flight. This just happened the other day, and after sharing this story with friends and family, a few of them suggested that I share it here. The scene is a Southwest Airlines flight. I was sitting in a window seat next to two lovely women, and directly horizontal from us was an empty seat, a mum and her son. The flight was taking off. For those who don't know, you're required to stay seated and keep your seatbelts on for the beginning of the flight until the captain says otherwise. I was strapped into my seat and decided to take out my Nintendo Switch from my carry-on beneath my feet. Then I hear, "Excuse me, ma'am?" I didn't realize at first that the mother in the seats horizontally from me was trying to get my attention. She unbuckled her belt and moved to the empty seat closer to me. "Ma'am, with the video game." I lifted my head, but the stranger next to me nudged me as well. "That lady wants to get your attention," the woman next to me muttered. I turned my head to see this woman leaning across the aisle with her hands on the armrest of the aisle seat in my row. "Sorry," she began. "I just wanted to know if there was any way that my son could use that game for a little while." "I'm so sorry," I began. "My Nintendo Switch is just really important to me. I don't feel comfortable giving it to anyone I don't know. I don't even let my sisters play with it." I was going to continue, but the woman cut me off. "Oh, my son's not like most kids," she replied. "He's not destructive. His cousin has one of those and he knows how to play." She smiled and set her hand out. The two women seated next to me looked at me as if they were also in disbelief. "I'm sorry," I said again. "I just don't feel comfortable. I brought it for me." "How old are you?" the woman said with a huff, retracting her hand and slapping it on her lap. "I'm 25, but I don't see how that matters," I replied, growing exceptionally uncomfortable. "Well," she began, clearly sounding agitated, "my son is 8. This is an hour and 45-minute flight and he just wants something to do. He can't see it for a few minutes?" "No, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm sorry, but I'm expecting you to understand since this is my property." I put my head down and I unpaused my game as to ignore anything further she had to say. "Are you serious?" She seemed genuinely livid. "Well, Bobby, sorry buddy, not everyone knows how to share." She said this to the kid next to her. Her child started whining and kicking the seat in front of him. "Thanks for this," she said to me. "A sweet kid just wants to share with you and you're being ignorant about it." Before I even opened my mouth, one of the ladies in my row snapped back at her. "How dare you bring that energy on this plane? She told you so kindly that she doesn't feel comfortable with passing her electronics to a stranger." But the mother wasn't having any of it. "She's an adult and can't share with a child for a few minutes of a nearly 2-hour flight." "You should have bought something for him to do then," the woman in my row responded. That shut her up good. At the end of the flight, the woman collected her luggage from the overhead bins and said, "I hope you're happy going against God's word, not sharing with a child." Some of the people around us were laughing. I'm sure that they all overheard the drama at the beginning of the flight. I've come across some entitled people in my life, but this strange lady really took the cake. Am I the jerk for not sharing? Wild! I am curious which of God's specific words this was that she was talking about. Either this is a very liberal application of one of the parables, or, and hear me out, modern editions of the Bible are just going completely wild with the new modern inclusions that they have in them. I can't say which. If I buy a Bible today, maybe I'll be able to find the "Thou shalt covet thy neighbor's Nintendo" commandment in Exodus. The ladies sitting with our author are 100% correct. The mum just needs to pack more to entertain her kid. This duty is not on strangers, and I would be livid if the mum didn't stop the kid from kicking the seat in front of him. Because guess what? That's not on the author either. And I should stress, it is fine to ask strangers for things like this, if a little weird. What's not fine is kicking up a fuss if they very fairly say no. It's not something you can expect. Well, that's enough Karen for today. See you next time, folks. Karen calls 911 because I'm a pregnant cocktail waitress, and that is not allowed. I'm a cocktail waitress. I'm 7 months pregnant. No, obviously, I don't drink while pregnant or drink on the job, ever. A woman, the Karen, comes in with what I'm assuming was her husband and son and daughter and asks to be seated. 4 for lunch. We're not really a restaurant, but you do have a small apps menu with sandwiches and wings and stuff. I give them menus and Karen says,
But wait, do you work here? Yep, but you're pregnant. You can't work here if you're pregnant.
I work here, I don't drink here, I say with a laugh, trying to keep the mood light. The woman looks over and says,
Have you taken any prenatal courses? Do you really think that's responsible to have your unborn baby in here?
This is where I made an error. I get defensive about anyone asserting that I'm a bad mother, obviously. So I said, well, you've brought your kids in here.
Yes, and what kind of example do you think you're setting for them?
I'm still collecting my thoughts at this point when they grunt and wave me away. I figure I can kiss my tip goodbye, but hopefully that'll be the end of the discussion. As a disclaimer, all these quotes are my best approximation of my memory in the moment. I see them flagging down the bartender after a few minutes and figure they're ready, so I go over as well. The Karen is asking to speak to a manager. Surprise. Now, they haven't even got their drinks yet, so nothing above my abilities could have really gone wrong. I just ask if there's anything I can help them with. And her husband, Mr. Karen, says really sternly, no, just a manager. Didn't you hear my wife? The place is too small for a manager, it's just servers and bartenders and 2 co-owners. The one who's working is on the back on a phone call and will be annoyed if I go and bother her. I realize they're probably still uncomfortable with my being pregnant, so I say maybe Ella, the only other server, can help? But Karen just gets up to physically look for the manager. I admit defeat and go back to drag her off her call. The owner tried not to let on how mad she was about being disrupted and goes over with a big smile to ask if there's anything she can do to help them. Karen informs her, as though it's urgent breaking news, your server is pregnant. The owner says she's aware and asks if they'd prefer a different server.
No. She can't be a drink girl if she's pregnant. That's endangering a child.
The owner says, I assure you none of our employees drink on the clock, especially not our pregnant ones. If you'd prefer, I can have Ella serve you instead. Mr. Karen comes in. I don't want my kids seeing this. Maybe I'm missing something? What don't you want your kids seeing? A pregnant woman around all this alcohol. I cut in. I don't know what you're insinuating, but I would never drink during pregnancy.
Look, honey, you didn't take a health class in junior high? With a drink right under you half the time, alcohol vapor is absorbed into your blood through the air, and then that blood goes to the fetus and poisons it.
The owner and I exchange a look and realize we won't get anywhere with her. The owner says, so we can have Ella serve you, or I'm afraid there isn't much we can do. We're not leaving until she's placed on maternity leave, or better yet, fired. We can't help you. I'll call the police. You're an accomplice to child endangerment. There's no child endangerment to speak of, sir. Please leave.
You may not think that a fetus is a child, but I was taught to believe life begins at conception, and I will stand up for all living things, big and small, because that's what my Lord and Savior wants me to do.
The entire time she's delivering this tearful speech, she's looking around expecting others to, join in with her? Applaud? The owner says, hey, I don't need anyone to tell me what Jesus said. If there was any actual child endangerment here, I'd have acted to stop it, but there isn't any. I need to ask you to please leave. I'm calling the police. You do that. We just try to stop serving their table. As we all wait for the cops to arrive, Karen keeps trying to give her sermon, but there was a game on that people had come to watch, and eventually everyone yelled at her until she piped down. Enter the cops. Awesome officers 1 and 2. Yeah, police, we received a call. Is there a Mr. Karen in here somewhere? Right here, officers. You said you were witnessing, checks notebook, child endangerment. Are the parties involved still in the bar? Karen family points me out. I pretend not to notice because I'm worried the officers will take them outside and I won't be able to watch any more fireworks. The other one comes in. So, what exactly was going on?
That woman was drinking. She's pregnant. You can plainly see she's very pregnant.
Before I can go over and tell them she's lying about my drinking, the officers look at each other and then look back at the Karen family.
That's not illegal. What?
Look here. I mean, it's definitely not recommended, but it isn't illegal. Now, do you know the woman? Is she a friend of yours? Family?
She works here, in a bar, and she's pregnant.
I want to see the place's liquor license revoked. So listen, she isn't doing anything illegal. What I can do is I will talk to her, but we can't take any action beyond that. Is there anything else you observed that you'd like to report? So the second officer comes over to me and takes me to a quiet spot while the first is getting their personal information and taking the rest of the statement. Karen is crying again, and I assume bemoaning being the last bastion of good Christian morality in this bar. Awesome Officer 2 introduces himself and congratulates me on the pregnancy and says I probably overheard why they were called and starts to offer me some public resources for new mothers, parenting classes, among other things. I didn't want to interrupt him, so I was waiting for the right moment to interject with my plea of innocence. That's when patrons come over thinking I'm in trouble and start defending me. We have plenty of regulars who know me and they wouldn't let this BS stand. Some even complained to the officers that the owner had asked the Karen party to leave and they'd continued to make a scene. So both awesome officers go and talk to the owner, who said she was just about to call them herself on account of the trespassing. But sirens outside are bad for business and she was hoping the Karens would eventually leave on their own. The officers tell the Karen party they need to leave. "This is a public space. I have every right to be here if I want." "No, sir, this is a private business, and the business owners have asked you to leave. It sounds like more than once, but at least once since we've been here."
This is a disgrace. This is an affront to scripture and child safety and…
"I understand you're upset, ma'am. Let's talk about it outside." Officer 2 places a hand on Mr. Karen and gives him a firm look. This next part was said as Mr. Karen walks out backwards so he can keep yelling at us, but bumping into things every step of the way. "I'll be contacting the authorities about your liquor license, bump. I happen to be very close friends with the mayor, crash. And you two, I want badge numbers. Don't think we're done here because we haven't even, bang, started." So the officers took them out, and as it was told to me by a regular who left around the same time, walked the Karens to their car, which was illegally parked in a handicap space, for which they were ticketed. They did make a complaint to the liquor authority, claiming, among many other things, that we served minors. We can't prove it was them, but we're sure it was them. We were investigated, but obviously came up okay. My boss asked me to hold off sharing this story with anyone until the matter was settled. But now it is, so I had to share. I'm still laughing about it. In short, a family of Karens tried to tell me I couldn't work as a cocktail waitress because I'm preggers. We tried to tell them they were wrong. They called 911 and they got a parking ticket. Wow. The crazy was so strong here. How have these people survived out in society for as long as they have? And how many restaurants have they been banned from? So many questions. Also, notice how the religious Karens also have completely wild takes on scripture that are definitely not actually in the scripture. Show me, "Thou shalt not serve margaritas while prego," and maybe I'll consider revoking this one criticism. But also look at the statement, "She needs to be placed on maternity leave, or better yet, fired." Better yet? Yeah, I'm sure the mother having no money when the baby's born will help their development immensely. That's clearly the Karen's priority here. Fricking nutters. Go and get banned from everywhere else and live in a cult far away from decent people, please. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Unwilling to pay? Let them eat splooge cake. So I'm a 17-year-old web dev who can make basic websites and stuff to earn money for video games. The jobs are pretty easy for the pay. I got picked up by some local bakery so that people could pre-order cakes and things online. It took a few hours to puke out a functional back-end and a day to make it look all pretty. Thanks, Bootstrap. I had agreed to 700 rupees, basically $10, which is insanely cheap even for India. But all I need is video game money, so I'm fine with that. When I'm done with the job, they needed to purchase the domains and a server, which I explicitly told them, "You pay me $10 and use another 10 to buy a domain and 5 to rent servers. The total is $25. They gave me $15 so I could set their stuff up. Once the website was fully operational, I asked for my money. But apparently they didn't want to pay because if I wasn't hosting the server anyways, why do I need compensation? You know, because apparently time has no value. The thing is, I could still access the server as I had the credentials for it. So I went home, logged in, and made one tiny change. The way the website works is that there's a customer page which shows you your orders, and there's a page for the store owners to see orders, payments, among other things. Here's what I did. I added a small inconspicuous, may contain splooge warning in all product details. In the page where it shows you order confirmations to the customer, some options are changed to have splooge in them, like splooge frosting. The website went down in about a week and they're back to selling on Facebook. I'm guessing someone complained about it or something. Yeah, honestly, the bakery deserved that. If you're not willing to pay for the people who are making your advertising, don't do advertising. And if you're going to shortchange them, you deserve bad advertising. Obviously, the narrator had to change the clinical term for this particular bodily substance to splooge, so if you weren't clear on what I meant, this particular term is the most friendly identifiable one he could find for the male contribution in the 2 starting ingredients needed to make a baby. So I hope that the customers enjoyed a week of high-protein cakes and bread and weren't too disappointed when that ingredient was removed from the advertising. Better luck elsewhere, protein consumers. My friend's entitled parent thinks I made up my severe allergy and then shames me for throwing up. This happened when I was about 8 years old, and my parents only recently reminded me that it occurred. For some background information, I'm really allergic to potatoes. They give me blisters all over my mouth and make me violently ill for about 2 days after eating them. Anyway, on to the story. When I was about 8 years old, I was having a sleepover with my best friend. My mum dropped me off at about noon, so I was going to have dinner at their house. My mother specifically told my friend's mother that I was allergic to potatoes, so she could make something without them. When dinner came around, my friend and I went to eat. His mother had made us casserole, but little did I know the main ingredient to this is potatoes. We ate and then went and played until we went to bed. At around midnight, I woke up with my mouth full of bleeding blisters. I ran to the toilet and started violently chucking up. Let me tell you, stomach acid does not feel good on open blisters. I was crying on the floor, blood and throw up leaking from my mouth, when the mother walks into the bathroom. She tells me that, "You need to stop being so dramatic if you want to go anywhere in life," and that allergies aren't real unless you let them be. Just a reminder, she's saying this to a crying 8-year-old child who's dry heaving over the toilet, bleeding from the mouth. She goes back to bed, leaving me in the bathroom for the rest of the night. Morning comes around and my mum comes to pick me up. Through my blistered mouth, I tell her what happened. She goes ballistic, tells me to wait in the car, and I can hear her screaming at the other mother from outside. Suffice to say, that was the last time I ever hung out with my friend at his house. In short, I'm allergic to potatoes. This entitled mother feeds me potatoes without my knowledge and calls me a drama queen for having an allergic reaction. So you know how in the first part of this video we had a made-up charge of child endangerment going on in that pub with the pregnant waitress? Well, if that particular Karen needed an example of what actual endangerment looks like, then go no further than this story. Like, there could have been actual charges coming out of this, and the lady who fed the kid potatoes should consider herself lucky that the author didn't die. The way that she walks into the bleeding and chucking up and immediately knows that this is the time for a sermon on how all of this is made up shows that it was definitely a premeditated move to make that particular meal. What an awful woman. The funny part is, the kind of person who believes that being a waitress while pregnant constitutes child endangerment is exactly the same kind of person who would think that allergies are made up. Let's just put all these people on one island together. Entitled mum insists that I should change my dog's name to not confuse her son about animals. This is so ridiculous and happened like 10 minutes ago. I couldn't walk home fast enough to get Wi-Fi and share it. Background info, I live in Argentina. I'm an advanced student in English teaching. I have 4 dogs and one of them is named Monkey. Before lockdown was enforced and made mandatory back in March, I used to tutor this kid called Kay. He's 5, in English. He'd be starting English classes at school this year and his mum, the entitled mother henceforth, had wanted him to have a head start in comparison to the other kids in his class. She had said that Kay was insecure about starting school and wanted him to feel accomplished and smart by being ahead of his classmates. Weird logic, but okay. She was paying me good money and the kid actually showed an interest in the language and all the activities I did with him. So tutoring him was actually enjoyable for both of us. When lockdown was enforced, we had to suspend the tutoring sessions because public transport was unavailable and they lived in the other corner of the city. So fast forward to today. I took my dog Monkey for a walk and we ran into the entitled mother and Kay at the park, and Kay was thrilled to meet one of my dogs at last. I'd talked about him before and showed him pictures. Kay was very polite and asked what her name was, how old she was, and if he could pet her. When I told him my dog's name was Monkey, he was thrilled to let me know that he knew what that word meant because they'd learned about different animals in his classes during the year. His mother was less thrilled to know that I'd named my dog as another animal. She started questioning me. although it felt more like an interrogation about why I'd do it, if I did it just to show off my skills in English, and if I was aware it could be confusing, and so on. I asked her what she meant by confusing, thinking that she meant about the gender of my dog. I find it silly that people assume animals' gender by their names, but it happens. But she said, and I'm quoting here, "Why would you try to confuse my son by naming a dog as another animal? He's trying hard to learn things in English because you prompted him to, and now whenever he hears the word monkey, he'll think of your dog." I tried to explain to her why I'd chosen that name for my dog, but she then went on about how I should change my dog's name to something more dog-like so children like her son wouldn't feel confused about animals. She was very insistent on names I could call my dog, even telling her son to try calling monkey other names to see if she responded. And I almost told her I could probably call her the entitled mother's name instead because she is a B word after all, so no confusion there. But I restrained myself because her kid was there and I didn't want to deal with her getting all angry at me in public. Kay said he liked Monkey's name because it's unique and suits her because of her curly tail, like a monkey cartoon, and I told him it was actually one of the reasons I'd chosen that name for her. To be honest, the other reason is that when I brought her home, I was on a binge for anything Arctic monkeys related, for some reason, so there's also that. The entitled mother realized there was no winning for her in the issue and quickly said some greeting, took her kid and left. Monkey and I actually shared a look for a moment, and I took it as a cue to go home already. God, we are on a crazy mum roll for this video now, aren't we? The narrator wonders whether his childhood cat, Cleopatra, was confusing to any other kids who had yet to take their first history class. But seriously, the author can't really be called a jerk under any circumstances here. Maybe under some light if she had gone on the offensive and actually followed through on her line about the lady being a B-word, but I'm glad she kept her cool here for the sake of the kid. And at least this woman realized eventually that she should just quit and take the L. That's more than you can say for a lot of the people in these videos. Am I the jerk for going to the ladies' room? I'm a 31-year-old man and was at a large store yesterday with my 5-month-old son, when he did what babies do. I went over to the restrooms and saw that there wasn't a family or companion restroom, just a men's and women's. I went into the men's room and saw there was a cubicle and a few urinals, but no changing table. The sink didn't have a counter either. I walked out and hunted down an employee to ask where the changing table was. She said it was in the bathroom, and I asked where, assuming there was a family or companion restroom on the other side of the store. She took me back to where I just was. I asked if there was another bathroom, and she said no. I told her I was just in the bathroom and there was no changing table. She asked if I was sure and suggested I look again. I was annoyed, but I went back into the men's room. No changing table. When I came out, the employee was gone. Keep in mind, my son has been in his number 2 filled diaper this whole time, so I gave up and headed into the ladies' room, which sure enough has a changing table. There was a woman in there washing her hands and she said, "Wrong bathroom, buddy." I gestured to my son and said, "No changing table in the men's room." She laughed and said, "Bro, that sucks." And then she walked out. So I rushed to change him, hoping to be done before anyone else walked in. I was almost done when a woman walked in and started screaming at me. I tried to explain what I was doing, but she kept screaming, "Get out! You can't be here!" And then she ran out. I finished putting the diaper on and rushed out of the bathroom. I saw the woman talking to an employee and decided to leave without my stuff. The employee tried to wave me down and stop me, but I rushed out to my car, buckled my son into his car seat and left. My wife said I absolutely did the right thing, but my mum said I'm an idiot and was 100% in the wrong. My sister won't stop laughing at me and is no help at all. Am I the jerk? How are you in the wrong here? Zero explanation from the mum here, and where the heck else are you meant to change the baby? If the employee showed you to the start of the area where this changing room is, and the only one that exists is in the ladies' room, what the frick else are you meant to do? I think the only thing that you could have done better was stand your ground when the employees came for you, as you were there at their advice after all. But I don't blame you for running either. Nobody has time for that crap and it sounds pretty stressful. I hope you can feed your mum a chill pill. Wife divorces and wants husband's $3 million private island, but he tricks her into taking the worthless island. The brother of a good friend of mine went through a divorce last year. The divorce was fairly messy. His soon-to-be ex-wife was trying to get as much as she could. My friend and his siblings all jointly inherited their grandfather's cabin a few months earlier. It is situated on a private island in Canada that has been owned by the family for 4 generations. It's about 500 square feet and easily worth over $3 million, and their grandfather had several unexpected private offers over that value, all refused with no interest in selling. The family was notified by her lawyer that she was requesting payment to buy out her 1/6 ownership. Each sibling owned 1/3, and she was trying to claim half of her husband's share. They tried to discuss a few alternatives, such as giving her a 1/6 right to usage but no ownership, and she declined, apparently intent on forcing them to sell it, knowing that none of them could afford to front the money to their brother to keep the cabin in their ownership. Their lawyer, a family friend, did a bunch of work to find a favorable solution for them. In looking over the grandfather's will, he discovered that the divorcing brother did not in fact own any part of the island with the cabin on it. It seemed that their grandfather bought up a bunch of other islands nearby the cabin and willed them to his grandchildren separately. He only owned a small nearby island made up of rocks and gravel, not big enough to build on and not worth any money at all. Not wanting to give her anything at all, they made her an offer, attempting to look like they were giving her more than she deserved and with the appearance of being desperate to keep ownership of the cabin. They gave her 75% usage rights of, quote, the island for 25 years with no ownership. In the offer, they named the worthless island by its legal land title name. She made a counteroffer, which was identical, but she wanted to add her rights to rent the island out for profit, and she wanted choice over her time allocation, which she drafted in the offer. They agreed. Apparently, her new boyfriend was more interested in the cabin than the money. They mailed her a set of keys for the cabin. They were keys for a master lock for their life jacket storage box on the dock at the shore. They also gave her a fake key with a bright yellow floating foam keychain to give her the impression that there would be a boat available to get to the island. They allowed her to believe her deal was for the cabin's island for quite a while, as the divorce was still not finalized. Her first weekend with the island was a long weekend, and she invited her family out along with her new boyfriend. They all went on a 400-kilometer drive, and were greeted by my friend's dad and their lawyer. The whole thing was planned by their lawyer, who I'm fairly good friends with as well. He tells me that her family was stranded on the island for hours as they hired a barge to ferry them over, and they waited until the barge left before going over the details of what she agreed to. He says she attempted legal action once more after that, accusing the family of fabricating the will after the fact. Apparently, her lawyer dropped the case before it even started. Okay, so an update. Apparently, I had a bunch of facts wrong on this story. I was rather drunk when I heard it originally. My friend says that the cabin wasn't an inheritance at all. The siblings purchased it jointly. Apparently, their grandfather had the cabin as an asset that was owned by his business. The business was bought by another company before he passed away, and the siblings quickly bought the cabin back when they discovered that it was sold. Also, the cabin was apparently not owned by the family for generations. It was a group of islands next to the cabin's island that they owned for generations. It seems the grandfather bought several more islands and had the cabin built to bring clients and business partners out for fishing trips. However, while the cabin and the land that it was built on weren't inheritances, the other group of islands were an inheritance. My friend's brother was already separated from his wife when they acquired the cabin. The wife was misinformed by a family member that the cabin was an inheritance. That's why she went after it so strong. Okay, so when the narrator first read the title of this story, he was fairly certain that this was just going to be an awful story of rich people fighting over their massive inheritances. But it seems like at least we aren't dealing in mansions and Lamborghinis after all. Yeah, from the perspective we have, it seems like the ex-wife was trying to milk her former partner for all the value she could, and was letting her new boyfriend have a say in the terms of things. It implies that she was definitely doing this to win big rather than have an amicable divorce from a relationship that just wasn't working. But we're a bit limited in our account by a drunk author and only knowing their side of things. That's a tentative jerk title for the ex-wife from me. Jerky until proven innocent, Your Honor. Pick a fight and then pull out a gat? Not on our watch. Back in my college days, several friends and I went to Lake Havasu, Arizona for a spring break. Those of you who've been probably hung around the London Bridge Resort at some point. Next to the hotel area, there is a walking path that follows a canal, which leads under the old London Bridge and then to Lake Havasu itself. This canal allows people to park their boats within walking distance to the resort. One night, 3 of my friends and I went for a stroll along this path. During the walk, we heard some shouting, which went along the lines of, "Hey, be cool, be cool. We're just leaving, man, be cool." My group hung back a bit, and after a second, a group of guys came up. We asked them what was going on, and they said there were 2 guys in a boat. They were flashing people in the face with a spotlight, talking crap and annoying them, and then pulling out a piece when they were about to get their butts kicked. We'll refer to the guys in the boat as D-bags from here on out. So my group decided that we weren't going to stand for this and came up with a plan. We continued down the pathway to D-bag's boat and played dumb. We asked them, what are those guys so scared of? And being the smug, self-satisfied little D-bags that they were, they said, "Those guys wanted to pick a fight with us, so I pulled my gat on them." It was actually an old .38 revolver. At that point, I knew this was going to be pretty easy. You see, one of the members of our group was a girl, a very pretty girl wearing a bikini and cut-off jean shorts. She laid on the dumb bimbo card and in no time had them eating out of her hand. She said, "I've never seen one before. Is it heavy? Do you have any more?" And these idiots handed her their piece to hold and said, "No, that's the only one." She then handed it over to our buddy Jay, who's a 6'4", 280-pound wall of meat. Jay threw that thing close to 250 feet away into the canal, which made a very satisfying thunk when it hit the water. Both D-bags were completely speechless. It took them close to 20 seconds just to process what had happened. Finally, one of them spoke and was all, "What the frick? Why did you do that? You'd better go get it." And we just laughed and said, "No, we won't. Think about that the next time you're flashing people with that spotlight." After a few minutes of incoherent shouting, one of them tried to get into Jay's face for some stupid reason. He didn't even make it out of his boat, and Jay shoved him back into his seat hard enough that the chair broke. Neither one of the D-bags were very big. Our girl buddy probably could have taken them. Our other buddy Jace told them to go park somewhere else for the night because if we saw them again, we would kick their butts for real. And they pulled off. And when they were out and away from us, they started talking crap again. But we just kept laughing at them. After they were gone, we finished our walk, went back to the hotel, and started partying again. It was a great night. So if any of you make it out that way again, get your snorkel out. There's an old, rusted piece of crap pistol at the bottom of a canal by the London Bridge Resort. Were we the jerks? Yeah, honestly, this or calling the cops is a great idea, but for the sake of entertainment, I have to say I do prefer this method. These guys' mouths were cashing checks that they could not pay, and they were feeling like big men whose only reason to feel that way was an antiquated peace between them. I don't really think any civilian in public should go armed in this way, but if you're gonna let it happen in your country, I'm pretty sure punk kids threatening passers-by isn't really your aim, right? Also, it's kind of funny thinking about these guys trying to go to the cops. What are they going to tell them? That these people destroyed our revolver that we were pointing at people on the waterfront? Bunch of clowns. They got what they deserved, and they probably didn't get that weapon in any honest way. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My wife keeps tying my boots after I've told her to keep her hands off them. I tried to teach her a lesson and really hurt her feelings. Yeah, I know the title is a bit bizarre, and I can't believe I'm actually writing this. My wife is a neat freak, always has been. She throws the notes that are on my desk out, assuming that they're garbage. My belongings get rearranged to the point where it takes me hours to find them, and it is something I've come to accept. I'm not happy about it, but we have a pretty happy marriage on the whole. I'm a volunteer EMT, and I keep my boots unlaced up against the wall next to my clothes hamper so that I can throw them on along with my uniform. If a call comes in during the middle of the night, for example. Well, my wife has taken to tying the boot laces when she sees them untied. Not only does she tie them, but she tightens them and double knots them to the point where I need to undo the knot, open up the boots, and let a little slack out to fit my feet into them. I ignored it the first few times, but the third time she did it, I made a point to bring it up to her the next day. I very calmly said, "Hun, I appreciate that you want everything neat, but please do not touch my boots in the future. Time is of the essence when I'm going on a call, and at 2 in the morning, I don't have the time to unlace them and open them up. It's not just a minor inconvenience, it's people's lives, so I'd appreciate it if you left them alone. She rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic and that she wouldn't help me out by keeping my things neat in the future. Well, she never stopped. No matter how many times I've asked her, told her, or begged her, she just laughed and said, "Well, you know how I am." The other night, a page went out for a CPR in progress. I went to throw my boots on, and they were once again tightened beyond recognition. So I'm sitting there on the edge of the bed, cursing, trying to get my boots open, and fumbling due to the stress of the situation. My wife opened her eyes, groggily looked at me and asked, "Don't you need to go on that call?" I know I was in the wrong here and I regret it. I slammed the boot onto the ground and yelled, "Yes, I do. I would have been out the door 5 minutes ago except some stupid idiot fricked with my goddamn boots again." My wife got up without another word, walked into the bathroom and slammed the door. I got my boots open and went on the call. By the time we arrived on site, the police had gotten the victim back, so I didn't have to do CPR, but I was sweating and shaking, thinking my delay could have cost a life. I got home and my wife wasn't talking to me. She ignored me the entire day until we finally sat down and talked. She said I'd scared her with how angry I got, that she thought I was going to hit her, and she didn't know I was capable of getting so angry. Note that I've never raised a hand to her, nor have I ever yelled at her before. I'm absolutely not a violent person in any way, shape, or form. I apologized for yelling at her, and acknowledged that I hadn't meant to snap at her. I was frustrated with the situation as I needed to get to the person in need of CPR as soon as possible, and it was a delay that didn't need to happen. I once again pleaded with her not to touch my boots because lives were literally on the line. She told me that if I was going to overreact and make her afraid, she would never touch my boots again because she didn't want to live like that. Last night, before I got into bed, I had a sinking feeling, so I went over and checked my boots. I was very disappointed to find them tightened up again, so I decided to show her how it felt. I went over to her closet and pulled out her running shoes. I unlaced the shoelaces on both of them, removed them from the shoes completely, curled them up into a little coil, put them inside the shoes, and put them back. I then went to sleep. At 6:15, I was woken up by my wife screaming, "How could you? Why would you do this?" holding up both laceless shoes with tears in her eyes. My wife likes to go for an early morning run, and I knew she'd want to get out the door as soon as possible. I smiled and said, "You know how I am, I just like things neat." She continued sobbing and walked out of the room. So by the time she was all laced up again, it was raining, so she'd missed out on her run. I actually feel pretty terrible about that because I really only wanted to delay her, not ruin her plans completely. At this point, she's alternating between crying that I went out of my way to hurt her and ignoring my presence. I acknowledge that what I've done has been pretty childish and not at all constructive. I just don't know what to do. She said, through tears, "You admitted that you were totally in the wrong for yelling at me, and then you turned around and took it out on me in a different way? What is wrong with you?" The problem is, to her, an apology means taking on 100% of the fault. When I apologized for blowing up, she took that to mean she was 100% in the right, and that my feelings were completely unjustified. So at this point, I haven't apologized for ruining her run, because she'll take that to mean that she wasn't wrong to touch my boots. I've tried to have these discussions, but it's in one ear and out the other. We have such a good relationship otherwise, but I feel like this issue has reached a tipping point, and it's going to continue to result in arguments until we resolve it. How do I make things right with my wife while still letting her know that I won't tolerate her disrespecting my property anymore? Okay, update. My wife and I started talking again. We had a very serious conversation, and I did apologize for what I did to her running shoes. And then I told her I had to speak some truth and I wanted her to promise me that she wasn't going to roll her eyes, interrupt me, scoff, or get sarcastic with me, which she did. I told her that I wasn't kidding about my boots, that while most of the time I caught geriatric transports, falls, and nausea, there were instances where response time was of the essence, and I didn't have time to play around with my boots in the middle of the night. I told her that there have been times when my intervention has been critical in saving a life, when my training has helped me recognize an underlying emergency, or when a call I made ensured that a patient was prioritized upon arrival at the hospital. I explained that a lot of the crap that I see I don't tell her about because I don't want to give her nightmares or make her worry about me. She actually listened and didn't dismiss what I had to say. She responded that she was trying to help by keeping things neat. I responded, "But you're not, sweetie. I'm not trying to be mean, but you're not helping. You're hindering me. One day it may be the difference between life and death. I need you to not touch my gear. It's where I know where it is, it's where I can easily find it in a short amount of time, and if you move it, you're impeding an emergency response. I don't care if it looks neat, it serves a function. It doesn't look pretty. If you want to help me, please leave my gear where I put it." A few nights later, I had my friend Officer Rich come over. Officer Rich was one of the 2 cops that did CPR on the victim on that big night of the blow-up. The 3 of us sat on our deck and had a few social distancing beers. He talked about getting there, doing CPR, giving Narcan, waiting for the ambulance, and getting her back shortly before we got there. He then pulled out a few photos of car accidents that I'd worked at. He showed them to my wife and pointed out, "This car went into a tree. Your husband crawled into the wreck and put a collar on the driver and stayed in there giving him oxygen until we could get him out. Your husband pulled a 3-year-old out of this wreck. Your husband recognized that the driver had a stroke and took her to a stroke center, which likely saved her life. After that, I told her I had something I wanted to show her, and I asked her for the same promise I'd asked earlier. When she agreed, I showed her a video on YouTube of a police body cam from an overdose. This video showed how critical time is in getting someone back, and the training someone goes through in order to give the counter-medication, do CPR, and utilize an AED. I told her, "I'm not trying to attack you. I don't want to have a fight, but I want you to understand what I go through. That I hope every call I go on is transporting a boo-boo, because otherwise it means if I don't do everything right, someone could die. If I don't get out that door as quickly as possible, someone could suffer brain damage while they're waiting for me to give them oxygen. If I'm upset and shaking because I had to waste time opening my boots, I might miss something critical and someone might not make it." She acknowledged that she understood and told me she hadn't really thought about the danger of what I do until the other night when she saw the photos of the wrecks. I told her that I think she has OCD and needs to see a therapist because it's hurting our marriage. I listed examples of her throwing important things out, moving things without permission, and messing with my gear. I offered to go together and said I'd be willing to work on things together. After I pointed out the pattern, she agreed that it was time to speak to someone. She wants to think about whether she wants to go together or by herself, but she's promised me that she's going to try and change her patterns. I brought up her saying that she thought I was going to hit her, and she acknowledged she had been with guys who flew off the handle with little provocation and scared her. That she had never seen me get angry like that, and it triggered her because she didn't think I was capable of blowing up like that. She's been very emotional lately and has been going through mood swings. She's been worried about me going out on calls. The other day she started crying and said, "I hope you know how much I appreciate what you do. Knock on wood, since we had the big talk, she hasn't touched my boots." Is everything resolved? Not by a long shot. But she seems to have a new appreciation of what I do. Thank you everyone for writing your responses. I wound up not showing her the thread because a lot of it was pretty harsh towards her. I recognize that I cherry-picked incidents that didn't put her in the best light, and there's a lot more to her and our marriage than that. She is the person I chose for the rest of my life, and I want us to work. In short, I let my wife into my world a little more, she let me into hers, and she hasn't touched my boots since. Yeah, this seems like a very complicated turn of events. I'm not going to point the finger at either you or your wife because it seems like, given some time, you guys have at least talked your way to an understanding. It seems like you both know that the blame isn't entirely on one or the other of you for the tension and that there might be some other mental factors at play here for each of you that might have escalated your fears and reactions a lot. What she was doing was disrespectful and not okay, and I think once you cooled off and stopped doing petty things to trigger her more neurotic side, laying out why you had to have your boots a certain way, the way you did, is a really good and mature way to handle it. All I really see in this story is 2 imperfect people making an earnest attempt at making a marriage work. There's actually a lot to admire in this story, and we wish you all the best in your future together.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.